and that stream will begin in a matter of moments. Let me tell you what I think we're doing today, and then the lawyers can set me right if I've missed it. I have two motions to suppress, one from each defendant. They all stem from an encounter in December of 2018. There had been the stop and search of a vehicle not directly associated with either defendant earlier that day or earlier that got law enforcement very interested in an apartment in Fulton County at the Cyan building, C-Y-A-N. They were interested in apartment 1104 and were trying to freeze the scene at 1104 so they could get a search warrant. During that time, lo and behold, Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Roca showed up at the apartment management office asking for a key to 1104. Mr. Roca was trying to get in, and as I understand the claim, it was to get his passport, but he didn't have a key. Neither Mr. Gonzalez nor Mr. Roca's names were on the lease, so the apartment leasing company wasn't interested in giving them a key. Law enforcement was interested in talking to the two of them. Mr. Gonzalez's version of events is that he was simply there to help translate for Mr. Roca. Mr. Roca drove a Buick Enclave, and ultimately in the Buick Enclave, in a trap, was found either 2 pounds or 2 kilos of cocaine. And what I believe Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Roca have been indicted for is solely the drugs found in the Buick and the trap in the Buick. Nothing in the apartment. In fact, I don't know if anything was found in the apartment. And nothing about the gentleman who was stopped earlier who had cocaine, who had been seen leaving 1104 and had the drugs in his car. Both of the defendants are seeking to suppress the fruits of the search of the vehicle. I think Mr. Harvey is also trying to suppress the fruits of the search of the apartment. No one's charged in this case with what was found in the apartment. It doesn't mean that there wouldn't be evidence from the apartment that could be used if this case went to trial, so we'll explore that a little bit. But it sounds like no one on the defense side, and certainly not the court, has received the search warrant. So we don't know what's in the search warrant, if Mr. Roca would even have a basis to seek to suppress what was found in the apartment if it was not predicated on what he contends was his illegal arrest, detention, etc. I think Mr. Gonzalez is also trying to suppress the brief statement he gave law enforcement while he was detained at the apartment complex. That's my rough read of where we are. I have a couple questions for you, Ms. Hall, and then we'll just make sure procedurally we're all on the same footing. Do you have a copy of the search warrant?
I do.
Have you given it to Mr. Harvey or Ms. Mormon before this morning?
It is my understanding that they have been provided with this person before I intend to petition.
Okay, and that's not Mr. Harvey's understanding based on his amended motion to suppress. Doesn't mean he didn't get it, but he didn't find it if he did receive it. And it may be that someone draws his attention to it, but my understanding is he hasn't laid eyes on it. Ms. Mormon, did you end up getting a copy of the search warrant that was executed on 1104?
Yes, Your Honor, I do have a copy.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll figure out at some point why Mr. Harvey couldn't find it, but Ms. Mormon could. A bonus copy is being handed to Mr. Harvey right now. Mr. Harvey, I'm of course not going to hold you responsible for its contents at this point. And if we need to reconvene to work through the contents of that, we'll do it. So the record is clear. At the latest, Mr. Harvey got a copy of the search warrant for 1104 at around 9:45 on the 14th of September. But counsel for co-defendant got it long ago. That was my question of you, Ms. Hall. I guess the second one would be, am I correct that the drugs that are alleged in the indictment would be the drugs found in the Buick and not drugs found in the apartment, if any were, or the drugs found in whatever car was stopped earlier in the day that's not directly associated with Mr. Roca.
That is right.
Okay, all right. Mr. Harvey, anything you want to add sort of procedurally as to where we are, what you think we are covering this morning?
No, Judge, in a rough sense, you have laid the record out. We don't agree with all, of course, but in a rough sense, that's where we are.
And to be clear, there is no record. I mean, and that'll be made when the witnesses testify. I gleaned this from reading the motions. But at least procedurally, I think I understand what's happening. We're not going to be surprised to learn there was a helicopter search or something like that. Ms. Mormon, anything you want to add?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Well, Ms. Hall, the burden is the state, so you may call your first witness.
Thank you. Ms. A. Collins, Mrs. Barsh. She's on in the jury room.
So the microphone is that everyone can hear on your microphone?
No,
Okay.
no, we'll get that far.
Okay. That's not going to happen again? All right.
Yes, sir.
Do you swear upon the testimony given in court the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God? Please state and spell your name for the record.
Detective Daniel Garsh, D-A-N-I-E-L, last name Garsh, G-A-R.
You know, see.
Good morning, Mr. Barsh. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. We may make sure everyone can hear everyone. Can you say, good morning, Ms. Mormon?
Good morning, Ms. Morgan.
Mormon.
Mormon, I apologize.
Could you hear that, Ms. Mormon?
I can, but I am struggling to hear both the state and the witness.
Okay. It may work better if you don't mind, Ms. Hall, if you stay at your desk. Ms. Mormon could hear you there. We're not sure why on this first time we're having live in-person witness testimony, the courtroom microphones are not working, but there is a microphone on the screen you can't see. So if you just try to project, we'll see if Ms. Mormon can hear you. Okay. All right. So Ms. Mormon, I'm going to have Ms. Hall ask you some of the preliminary questions, name, rank, serial number, and let me know at the end of those if you're still having trouble hearing Detective Garsh, okay?
Okay.
Thanks.
Mr. Garsh, can you please tell the court where you currently work?
I currently work for the City of Alpharetta Police Department.
And what is your position?
I'm a detective with the Alpharetta Police Department, currently assigned to the Drug Enforcement Administration as a task force officer.
And what are some of your duties?
So being assigned to special investigations for Alpharetta and to the drug enforcement, we primarily deal with drug trafficking, money laundering, being on a federal task force to deal with federal major crimes.
Ms. Mormon, how did that go?
It's better. The Mr. Garsh is just very low. If you could speak up just a little bit.
Okay, I mean, he's doing his best, but trying to think of a better way to do it. What was your thought? Well, the microphone's not working. So we could move it closer, but it's not doing its thing. What if I'm gonna go get a mask and a witness will not wear a mask unless that creeps you out? Okay, we'll try that. Hold on.
Court on order.
All right, let's try that.
Is that better now?
Was that better, Ms. Mormon?
Better now? Well, you put the microphone right here.
Yes, yes, it is.
Great.
Thank you.
And I'll start with, no.
I think we're okay. I think the record is clear, and if she wants to review that, we'll confirm he works at Alpharetta, now at DEA.
Detective Clark, are you post certified?
I am.
Were you post certified on December the sixth, 2018?
At the time, yes.
Were you asked to respond to a case involving a search warrant on an apartment, that's related to a drug investigation?
I was.
And was that location 3380 Peachtree Road Northeast, apartment 1104?
Correct.
And is that in Fulton County?
It is.
When you got, to that apartment complex, where did you go?
I went to meet Special Agent Jamie Julio. He was at the leasing office.
Okay. Did you just go in to meet him, or were you, called in to meet him?
I was requested to be in there for assistance.
Can you spell his last name for the record, if you know?
Yeah, I believe it's Digulio. Go home to them.
Digulio.
I'm missing an I.
You said you were requested to come in.
Yes, ma'am.
Whoever requested you to come into the apartment complex, did they say why they needed your assistance?
Yeah, Special Agent Julio was at the leasing office speaking with property management regarding the apartment we were obtaining the search warrant for. While there, he stated that 2 individuals had arrived and were attempting to gain access to the apartment we were trying to secure the search warrant for. As he was by himself and those 2 individuals, he requested additional personnel to come to assist him.
Okay. So at this time, when Special Agent Julio was inside of the lobby, had the search warrant been secured at that time? Had the search warrant been secured at that time?
I was unaware. I believe that one of our task force officers was on DWI attempting to secure it.
When you arrived in the lobby, what did you see?
There were 2 individuals, 2 males that were standing in the lobby. We Roches and Gonzalez and Sue. Jamie, Special Agent Julio, was walking from the, like it's all glass building in there, like all glass walls. He was walking out of where the property manager was to meet those 2 individuals. He was in the lobby with them. And that's when Special Agent Robert Ransom, RANSOM, and I approached both of them and Jamie.
When you approached the defendants, what did you guys do next, if anything?
So we then asked, what were they doing to go to that apartment? What was their relationship to it as we were there investigating that apartment? Special Agent Julio speaks both Spanish and English, so we had spoken with Roches, both, but the other individual, Gonzalez, spoke English. And they stated that they were going there because Roches stayed at the apartment. He was staying there, living at the time.
At this moment, when the officers are speaking with the defendants, were they being detained at that point?
Temporarily, while we were talking to them, we can smell the odor of marijuana coming off of Mr. Gonzalez, the individual.
Okay, so when you initially approached and you were asking them why they were trying to get into that apartment, was that the detention, or are you saying the detention was after you smelled the marijuana?
They were. We had that apartment under surveillance at that time, and there was a separate incident that led us up to that apartment where we had stopped an individual who had several kilos of cocaine on them. They were taken into custody, and we had to watch that apartment under surveillance.
So did you smell the marijuana as well?
I did.
Okay, when you smelled the marijuana, what happened at that point?
Special Agent Ransom asked Mr. Gonzalez if he had anything in his pockets that was dangerous contraband of that nature. Mr. Gonzalez then pulled out a cigarillo or a cigar type pack, a little smaller blister pack. And inside there was the marijuana. I mean, it smelled very strong when we took it out. And the top of it was open, and you could see that there was marijuana inside of it.
And then Mr. Gonzalez speak English?
He did.
So when Special Agent Ransom had him, or asked him did he have any marijuana or anything on his person, he just pulled out the cigarillo package?
Correct.
Did he open up the package, or did one of the officers open it?
I don't recall that.
After you guys discovered the marijuana, what happened after that?
We both went into handcuffs at that time because of the marijuana. Once we determined there was no weapons or other contraband on either of them and that they were being cooperative, we took them out of handcuffs, but let them know that they were still being detained at that point.
The individual that, you were speaking with that smelled of marijuana and that you guys retrieved marijuana off of, is he important today?
You might have seen them too.
I'm sorry. Is he in the courtroom or on the monitor? Oh,
What am I supposed to? Yes,
I'm sorry.
Mrs. Mormon, I'm asking that name.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I'm sorry, with the.
Yeah, looking at the screen with Miss, yes, with Mrs. Mormon on the screen right here, that's the individual.
Your Honor, I'm sorry to take this charge. Can you describe what he's wearing?
You turn the camera back in, I'm sorry, I only see Mrs. Mormon. He has shorter hair, and I can't tell, I mean, with the screen, there's gonna be blue or gray, like a button-up shirt.
And is this the individual that you were speaking with, this defendant Gonzalez, at the time of the incident?
Correct.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that Detective Barnes has identified defendant Gonzalez as one of the individuals that came to our.
He has it well.
So after the marijuana was found and, at this point, Mr. Gonzalez was detained, where was the other, defendant?
The lobby area that we're standing is quite small, I don't want to give an exact square foot, so I'm going to tell you. But definitely closer than you and I are from right now, and he was seen with, Special Agent Julia.
And, do you see that individual in the courtroom?
With the screen
Well, in the actual court?
I did, standing over there. I
Can
was
you
sitting
describe
on
what he's wearing and where he's sitting?
glasses, headphones, a black mask, and a gray button-up shirt.
And is it the other individual that was identified as Mr. Rocho as?
Rocho,
Yes, who was inside of the lobby that day?
Correct.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that Detective Garces also identified the other defendant, Mr. Rocho. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. As the defendant that.
You are, but he has.
I apologize. So when you say that, you guys were standing close to each other in the lobby, were you guys standing close enough to where you could hear conversations that were, going on between, whoever was talking to Mr. Rocha at the time?
Yes.
Do you know what officer was talking to him at the
I
time?
was Special Agent Julia.
Okay, did you overhear anything while you were also engaging with, defendant Mr. Gonzalez?
I did.
Between-
Yes, Julia was speaking both Spanish and English to me.
Or you saying the defendant, Mr. Rocha, was speaking both English and Spanish?
Did you ask the Special Agent?
No, I was trying to clear up your answer. I didn't hear what your response was.
I thought you asked who was speaking to,
Yes,
yes, the Special Agent Julia.
yes, okay, I'm sorry. And, could you hear the conversation that was going on between?
Yes,
Okay. And did you hear when Special Agent asked, the defendant, Mr. Rocha, for permission to search the vehicle that he drove in?
I did.
Do you know what his answer was?
That he gave consent.
And was that in Spanish or English?
He asked him both, English and Spanish.
And which one did you understand?
The English one.
Okay. What was the reason for asking for consent to search that vehicle?
So, again, we had that vehicle that was initially stopped with the cocaine in it. Both individuals were attempting to get into that apartment that we were securing a search warrant for. And then we located marijuana on Mr. Gonzalez. So while speaking with them, Mr. Gonzalez stated that they had arrived in that car, I believe it was a Buick Enclave that was parked in the parking deck. I believe Special Agent Julio asked if there were any other individuals in the vehicle so we can make sure that no one else was trying to get up to that apartment that we were securing a search warrant for to keep it secure. And at that point is when the consent aroused from Special Agent Julio.
Is it normal policy for, while you're securing a search warrant for you to secure the location? As
Yes.
well? In securing a location, what are the steps that are taken by the officers? For anyone that may be attempting to get into the, why are steps taken by the officers?
Preservation of evidence, for safety reasons for not only ourselves, but the general public. We're not sure what's in that apartment, we can only maintain visual on the outside of it. If there's some type of weapons or additional people that might come out and, again, to destroy evidence while we're trying to obtain a search warrant.
Did you ever hear the defendant Rocha, rescind his consent from searching the vehicle?
I did not.
Do you know where the defendants were taken after Mr. Gonzalez was detained and after the consent was given by Mr. Rocha?
Yes, so after Special Agent Julio received the consent, he was actually giving the keys to the vehicle. And at that point, I went out to the parking deck and stood by, because K9 was already en route to come to the apartment for the search warrant. And we stood by in the parking deck. It's my understanding that they were taken to a model showroom for the apartment complex to get them out of the lobby, so they wouldn't be in the public view of the eye or interfering with the business of the apartment complex.
Okay, I'm gonna step back for a moment. You said that he was handing, when he gave consent, he also handed the key. So was that happening simultaneously? He gave consent and handed the key at the same time?
Correct.
Okay. And you said that they were taken to the model room to be taken out of the way. Were they further questioned in the model room?
That's my knowledge.
Okay. One more, Your Honor. The second part, were you wearing a body camera today?
No.
Are you?
What was the question?
Was he wearing a body camera that day?
Understood.
Do you normally wear a body camera?
No, we're not issued body cameras on the federal task force.
You said that you stood by the car while you waited for K9. Did you guys eventually search that vehicle?
We did after K9 came and deployed on it twice.
When you say deployed on it twice, what does that mean?
After the K9 arrives, he then deploys the dog, takes it out of the vehicle, lets it do the tree sniff. I'm not a K9 officer, but they conduct there.
But you were present for this
I was.
encounter. And after after the K9 was deployed, you guys searched, did you search the vehicle or did someone else search the vehicle?
I believe it was myself, Special Agent Julio, and the K9 cameras that came out.
Was anything ever recovered out of the vehicle?
Yes,
What was recovered?
several kilos of cocaine from a trapped compartment underneath the back seat.
Do you know, I know you're not the K9 camera, but do you know if that's where the K9 indicated?
Yeah, they made it very clear. I mean, it was, from my understanding of watching the dog, he was adamant at trying to get to a specific location because we were seeing the vehicle.
Now, I know this was over 2 years ago, but do you remember about how long you guys talked to the defendant inside of the lobby before you guys searched the vehicle, before K9 was?
Not long. I remember making contact with them, and within 30 minutes tops, that K9 was already out for the search warrant of the apartment. So once they arrived at scene, we went outside.
Okay, do you remember, from the initial contact when the consent was given by, defendant Rocha, how long that conversation had been going on when you guys initially stopped the defendant?
Not more than maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops.
Hold on a minute. I'm sorry, thank you. A few more questions about the actual location of the vehicle.
Yeah.
I know that you said that Defendant Rocha gave permission or consented to the search of the vehicle. How did you guys locate the vehicle?
They had explained where the location of the vehicle was to us.
And who explained?
Gonzalez and Rocha, I don't know, just pronounce the last name.
And did they, where did they say the vehicle was from?
In the parking right outside the leasing office before the gate entrance to get in.
And did they also describe what kind of car was being driven?
Yes,
Did they walk out to the car with you all, or they went to the showroom?
they went to the showroom.
No further questions, Your Honor.
I have a question, maybe two, and then we'll see if Mr. Harvey or Ms. Mormon have any questions for you. Do you know if at the end of this encounter on the 6th of December, if Mr. Gonzalez was taken into custody, booked in?
At that point, I was, after the vehicle search, I then went to the apartment to assist with search warrant, so I never re-encountered them again at the showroom or anything after that.
You don't know if they were released to the street, given a ticket, or taken to jail?
Oh, in general outcome, they were arrested. I still know exactly when they were placed back in handcuffs and said, hey, you're, being arrested.
Okay, do you know what agency would have arrested them?
Atlanta PD came out to assist us with that.
Okay. So both Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Roca would have left the Cyan apartment complex in the back of the squad car?
Correct, because they Atlanta PD, yes, sir.
And do you know Would it have been the marijuana? What was the charge or the basis for their arrest?
I believe it was the cocaine that we located inside the vehicle.
Okay,
I don't recall if they charged him with the marijuana or not.
okay. Got it. Thank you. Mr. Harvey?
This morning.
Okay, Ms. Mormon, Mr. Harvey is saying you can go first. But you need to get off mute.
I apologize. Can I have 1 second to speak with my client, Your Honor?
Sure, go back on mute.
Fix the wire down here.
Okay. It turns out, Mr. Laris, we only have one client who requires some triple services, so.
We'll do it.
However you want to work it. It seems to be going well so far. Sure.
Okay, we're ready.
All right, you're up.
Can everybody hear me? Okay.
So far.
Okay. Officer Garsh, in December 2018, you were a task force officer, correct?
Correct.
And you were called out to this incident to assist Officer DiGiulio, is that how you say his name?
Special Agent DeJulio, correct.
DiGiulio. And once you arrived to the scene, you arrived to the lobby of the Cyan.
Correct.
And in the lobby, there were two individuals, Mr. Gonzalez and which were later identified as Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Roca.
Correct.
When you were the first officer to approach the defendants, correct?
I walked out there with both Special Agent Ransom and DeJulio.
And upon approaching Mr. Gonzalez, you initially just asked why he was there.
You said it one more time, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, when you initially approached Mr. Gonzalez, you just basically asked why he was there. That was your first question.
Correct.
At that point, you knew that he was trying to gain access to apartment 1104.
Based on what the property manager or leasing staff had told us.
Had you asked Mr. Gonzalez his name?
I asked him his name.
At this point, had you asked him to identify himself in any way?
I don't recall.
Once you were made aware that he was trying to gain access to 1104, you didn't ask him his relationship to that apartment in any way?
I don't
Like his
recall.
relationship to Mr. Beltran, to the leasee of the apartment?
Yes, I don't specifically remember if it was I that had said it. I believe Special Agent DeJulio had asked him what their relationship to the apartment was and why they were trying to gain access to it.
And Mr. Gonzalez said that he was just there to basically interpret for Mr. Roca.
I don't recall specifically what he had said about his relationship to the apartment.
Okay. Immediately upon approaching these two, or Mr. Gonzalez, you identified yourself as DEA,
Correct.
and you essentially cuffed Mr. Gonzalez right then.
I did.
And after cuffing, you asked if he had any weapons.
When we first made contact with him, we asked if they had any weapons or contraband on him.
And after cuffing Mr. Gonzalez told you that he did in fact have marijuana on him.
That one I don't recall specifically. I do recall asking if he had anything on him and that he indicated he did have marijuana on this person as he already smelled like it. And that's when Ransom had obtained the marijuana from him.
Can you repeat the answer? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
The microphone doesn't work, so, oh, there's a new one there that works
Yeah.
now? No?
Is that better for you?
So the microphone is actually that TV, so you don't need to lean down.
Into this one?
That is not doing what you think it's doing.
No, that's right.
Yeah, so you're trying to talk into that big TV that you can't see.
Try to shoot around the glass. One more time, you said after we got there.
I was saying, you identified yourself as DEA, in which you said you affirmed, and then you immediately cuffed Mr. Gonzalez. And I was saying that you had actually cuffed him before Mr. Gonzalez told you that he had marijuana on him.
I don't recall specifically if we had cuffed him before or not.
Okay, Mr. Gonzalez did essentially say that he did have marijuana and gave or was searched, and there was a cigarillo with marijuana in his pocket.
Correct, that I recall.
And once you guys did obtain the marijuana, you essentially just threw it away.
I did not throw anything away.
You did not throw the marijuana away? I couldn't hear the response.
I don't recall anyone throwing the marijuana away. I specifically did not discard any marijuana.
Okay. After Mr. Gonzalez was cuffed, he was brought into a showroom at the Cyan complex.
Correct.
And in the showroom, he was asked how he got to the apartment building.
I don't know the specifics of when he went to the showroom. I was not there with him in there.
Okay. You were there when Mr. Gonzalez explained the location of the vehicle, of Mr. Roca's vehicle?
Yes,
And he told you it was in the parking garage?
yes,
And this was after he was placed into the showroom
no, prior.
prior? How long did you say he was in the lobby prior to being brought into the showroom?
Maybe no more than 15 minutes.
And you guys approached, you approached Mr. Gonzalez in the lobby at approximately 1:45 p.m.
I don't recall the specific time. I'd have to refer to the report on that one.
Okay. 1 second. You specifically asked Mr. Gonzalez how he arrived to the Cyan, did you not?
I was one of people who have asked that, correct?
Okay. You were one of the officers that you were at the vehicle as it was being searched, correct?
Correct.
And do you recall how long it took to search the vehicle?
No, I do not.
You don't recall how long, I guess, once you guys identified and located the vehicle in the parking garage, you don't know how long officers were out there searching before they found a trap?
Before they found the trap, no.
Okay. 1 second, Your Honor. Nothing further for this witness, Your Honor.
Okay. I have a question before we see if Mr. Harvey has any questions for you. Am I understanding correctly that any and all information that you obtained, you meaning law enforcement, from Mr. Roca and Mr. Gonzalez would have been in that initial encounter in the leasing office?
Me personally, correct.
So you personally, it's all limited to you. That with the extent of your questioning of either Roca or Gonzalez was limited to the brief time in the leasing office.
Correct.
You were not in either of, what you call them, showrooms, asking either gentleman any questions.
I was not.
Then you're out to the car waiting for the K-9 for the search happens.
May I follow up, Your Honor?
You may.
Officer Garsh, so you were never in the showrooms, period, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, nothing further for, oh, bless you.
Mr. Harvey,
Back up to the voting booth.
you may.
What just happened?
Morning, Detective. Are you still a detective
I am.
and you're still with the task force?
Correct.
I understand that this happened some almost 2 years ago. Did you prepare any reports or notes of this particular incident?
I did not.
Is there a task force person that is designated to prepare reports?
No set designation.
Do you know who prepared reports of this particular incident?
Special Agent DeJulia.
And you had, excuse me, an opportunity to review his report before your testimony today?
I have looked at it already.
Okay, so the answer is yes?
Yes.
Did you make any or tell anybody any corrections or additions or deletions to that particular report?
I did not.
As I understand it, at approximately 11 o'clock that day, there was a traffic stop, correct?
I don't know the specific time, but there was a traffic stop prior to the day.
I'm sorry?
I don't know the specific time, but there was a traffic stop earlier today.
All right. Do you know whether it was minutes or hours before you all arrived at the Scion?
Was not minutes, so that had been 2-3 hours.
Okay. So 2 or 3 hours before, Mr. Beltran was stopped by the Sandy Springs Police Department, correct?
I believe so.
All right. He was stopped at a location that was nowhere near that apartment complex, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And prior to that time, there had been a GPS installed on Mr. Beltran's vehicle, correct?
That I was not the case agent on that one, and I did not assist him with that traffic stop, so I'm not 100% on the specifics of it.
Okay. Well, do you know whether Mr. Beltran had been followed for a period of some time prior to December 4th?
It was my understanding that he was.
Okay. For almost 2 months?
Don't know the specifics of the time frame.
How is this relevant to the limited, I'm not trying to limit, but the focus of today is the encounter at the Scion.
Well, it's relevant in this respect, Judge. For almost 2 months prior to the agents going to this particular residence, Mr. Beltran was being, he had a GPS on his vehicle. He would leave his residence and go to a particular residence pretty much every day, stay at that particular residence for a short period of time, and then leave. So that the investigation really had absolutely nothing to go on with regard to his residence, other than it was his residence. So when they came to this residence, it was just sort of a shot in the dark.
Did I misunderstand, and we'll see what is established eventually, that Mr. Beltran was followed from 11:04, the day he was stopped and the drugs were found? I understand he was stopped in Sandy Springs, which is not near the Scion, but did I misunderstand that he left 11:04, was eventually pulled over and had drugs in his car?
No, you are incorrect. On that date, he went to the same address he had been going to, which is 358 Copeland Lane Southwest in Marietta, Georgia. He went to that address and then was stopped. That's why he got stopped up in Sandy Springs. So there was no connection between the apartment on any day that there was surveillance on Mr. Beltran. And he got stopped after he went to a particular house in Marietta. And then there was a traffic stop in Marietta. What I'm trying to say is there's no reason for that. They had no reason to go to that particular apartment other than, oh man, we just want to see what's there.
Well, it's in, okay. You'll argue what you argue, but I don't think we need to go too far afield. That would be the basis for the search warrant. But hopefully you're not arguing there was absolutely no connection between Mr. Beltran and 1104.
No, I'm not arguing that there is a connection, but there has to be more than just a connection, as you sure know. Anyway, would you disagree with me that that stop occurred around 11 o'clock?
I don't know the specifics of the time.
Do you have any idea what time you arrived?
I'd have to look at the report again. I believe it was 1:45, maybe 1:45 is what it said. I don't have a copy in front of me.
Okay. You didn't take any notes. You have no independent recollection of what time you arrived.
I did not take any notes.
Okay. Well, and you have no independent recollection of what time you arrived.
Independent clerk.
Recollection.
Okay, so I couldn't hear you with the next. No, the report said 1:45, and I arrived.
Okay. So at that particular time when you arrived, I understand that Mr. Roca and Mr. Gonzalez were already in the lobby, correct?
They had arrived there, yes.
All right. Well, were they sitting in the lobby?
Standing,
They were standing together in the lobby?
if I recall, yes.
Okay. And were they standing together in the lobby with an agent, like Mr. DiGiulio?
Yeah, we hadn't approached them yet.
Okay. So they were, you never saw them at the counter or at the desk, correct?
No,
And when you arrived and they were standing there, was Agent DiGiulio at the desk?
he was with the property manager or assistant, whoever leasing staff person was with.
And where was that? Was that in the lobby as well?
It's like the way I described it, it's like one lobby and the offices are glass walls. So it's kind of like one big room with just glass walls dividing them.
It's a private residence, correct?
Private apartment complex over here.
Right. So can the public go in and go upstairs to any of the apartments without permission or without being stopped in the lobby?
I believe they have a key fob. I don't work at the apartment complex, so I don't know the specifics of it.
Okay. And same thing with the parking location. Is the parking location underneath the building or to the side of the building?
It was a parking deck, from what I recall.
Okay, and how do you get in and out of the parking deck?
There was guest parking, like visitor parking when you pull in, and then there was a gate to get in to go where residential parking was.
Okay, so if you were a resident, you had a key card.
I'd assume,
Okay. So did you know whether or not you needed a key card to get up the elevator
I
in
don't
the
know.
apartment? So when you arrived, Mr. Gonzalez, Mr. Roca standing there, DiGiulio was talking to the property manager. You didn't hear that conversation, did you?
Between whom?
Between Agent DiGiulio and the property managers.
No.
And after that conversation, you're just still standing there. Does Agent DiGiulio approach you?
He called me, we have handled radios, communications with each other. He informed me that the two individuals were in the lobby trying to gain access to the apartment we were securing first.
Okay, well, how big is the lobby that you guys needed a radio?
This is when I was approaching. When I
When you were
was
still in
approaching,
your car, he advised you by radio?
while walking to get into the lobby area.
Okay, while walking to get in. And when you got in there, what did you do with regard to the two individuals?
I confirmed with Julio that he said they were trying to gain access to the apartment, and then we made contact with him.
Okay, and when you say you made contact with them, how did you make contact with them?
We identified ourselves as law enforcement.
Okay, and said, can we talk to you, or what did you say?
We asked,
Hi, I'm law enforcement.
are you guys trying to go to, what's your relationship with the apartment 1104?
Okay,
Ransom was with you at this time?
Correct.
So there are three of you.
Three of us total.
all right, and you showed your badges,
Mm,
is that right?
Yeah, our credentials.
Okay, and said, we're law enforcement. Were you trying to get access to the apartment, correct?
Correct.
And who did you address that to?
I was speaking with Gonzalez, the younger one.
Okay, and you were speaking English, I assume.
Yes, I don't speak Spanish.
And did Mr. Gonzalez answer you?
He stated that he was there with Mr. Rochos, I don't know, mispronounce his name.
And was anybody translating what was being said at that that particular point into Spanish?
Not between myself and Mr. Gonzalez.
Okay, and how about for Mr. Roca?
Agent DeJulia was speaking with him both in English and Spanish.
Okay, so you were talking to Mr. Gonzalez, Agent DeJulia was talking to Mr. Roca. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And at that particular time, did you hear Mr. Roca say anything?
Did I hear him say anything?
Yeah, did you hear him answer any questions or say anything?
Not specifics. I don't recall the specifics of the conversation.
And was he speaking Spanish?
A combination of English and Spanish, I believe.
But you don't recall what he said?
Not specifically during the general conversation.
Okay. And this conversation lasted how long?
No more than maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
What, 10 minutes? What else did you ask in the 10-minute conversation?
Who wrote this? I didn't ask him any
No,
questions.
what else did you ask Mr. Gonzalez during this 10 minutes?
After we located marijuana on him, I didn't say much more to him after that.
Okay, well, all right. I was talking about the conversational part first. The conversation must have been 90 seconds, 2 minutes. Hey, were you guys trying to get in? What's going on? Right?
Correct. I mean, initially we contact with him. Yes.
Okay, and then you smelled marijuana, right?
Immediately upon approaching him.
And that was on Mr. Gonzalez, correct?
Correct.
So you asked him about marijuana, correct?
Yes.
Right, and he provided some small amount, misdemeanor amount, personal use amount of marijuana, correct?
Some marijuana.
Okay. And were both of the gentlemen at that particular point arrested?
Then they're being detained.
Okay, they were being detained in handcuffs.
Initially they were, then we took them out of handcuffs.
I didn't ask that yet. At that particular time, you, I was being law enforcement,
Yeah.
placed both Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Roca in handcuffs, correct?
Correct.
Those handcuffs were placed behind their back,
Correct.
I guess. Were they then sat down, put down in the lobby? What happened to them after they were handcuffed?
Still standing in the lobby.
Okay, so they're handcuffed standing in the lobby. And at that time, who patted down Mr. Roca?
I began to pat him down.
I beg your pardon?
I began to pat him down.
Okay. At that particular time, had you seen anything that Mr. Roca had done to give you any idea that he was either armed or dangerous?
Armed or dangerous at that point?
Yes.
No, he just had a strong odor of marijuana about him.
Okay. And did you pat him down?
I did.
Did you take items out of his pockets?
I don't recall if I took him out specifically.
Well, if you had something in his pockets, what happened to the things in his pockets?
I had asked about the bulges in his pockets from the cigarette pack and other items he had in there.
You asked Mr. Gonzalez then.
Correct.
All right, how about Mr. Roca?
I didn't have a conversation with him about that.
Okay, when you patted him down, did anybody take anything out of his pockets?
When I patted crew down,
I thought you said you.
Yeah, you may have misspoken. Did you pat down both gentlemen or only
I
Mr.
thought he was talking
Gonzalez?
about Gonzalez.
You did not pat Roca down.
No, I don't recall patting him down.
Okay.
And I misunderstood.
Okay.
No, he misunderstood. You asked Roca, he said yes. He meant
I
Gonzalez.
thought you said
Okay.
Gonzalez.
Okay, so we're clear. You, Detective Garsh, did not pat defendant Roca down.
No.
You patted down the gentleman you had been speaking with who smelled like marijuana.
Correct.
Okay.
Great. Did you see anyone pat Mr. Roca down?
I believe Special Agent DeJulia did.
Okay. And did you see if anything was taken from his pocket?
Not that I recall.
Okay. And after they were handcuffed, patted down, what physically were done with them at that point?
They were taken out of handcuffs.
Okay, and taken where?
They stayed in the lobby for a moment of time, maybe a couple minutes.
Okay, and they're standing in the lobby with you and two other agents, correct?
Correct.
They had just been placed in handcuffs and patted down, correct?
Correct.
And then you continued a conversation with them, correct?
I did not specifically continue conversation.
Okay, did Special Agent DeGiulio continue a conversation with them?
He didn't for the consent.
Okay, well, and what precisely did he say that you understood in English?
To Julio,
Yes,
about the vehicle and the consent.
yes.
He requested consent to search the vehicle, and I remember seeing keys being handed to Agent Julio.
Okay. So as you understood it, you didn't know what was being asked of Mr. Ropeland, but it is your contention that he handed Agent DeGiulio the keys.
I had the keys. Special Agent Julio stated they given us consent for the car.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop you there, and I'm sorry. How did you have the keys?
After doing the pat down and taking it out of the pockets, there was like a small table in the lobby, and that's where their items were placed on, and the keys were
All
there.
right, well, that's what I was getting. So now let me back up again. I understand that while he was handcuffed, he, being Mr. Roper, was patted down. The contents of his pockets were taken out of his pockets and placed on a table. Is that right?
I remember the contents of Gonzalez being placed on the table, and then there were contents from both of them, so I'm assuming yes.
Okay, contents from both of them on a table, correct?
Correct.
And it was from that table that you retrieved the keys to the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
And this was after you contend that Agent DeGiulio was talking with Mr. Roca, and he said, sure, or he said, yes, you can search the vehicle.
Consent.
And so you then took those keys and went to search the vehicle?
No, went outside and waited for canines to arrive on scene.
Okay.
Was the Buick Enclave in the guest parking that's publicly accessible? I could park there, you could park there, or was it inside the gates you need some way to access?
Just parking, from what I recall.
Any pictures of it there? I think he said yes, as I recall. Any pictures of where it was when you guys searched it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Any video of taken of the search?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Did the apartment complex have surveillance video? Did it have video inside the lobby?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did it have it inside the parking deck?
I'm not sure that I'll put it up.
All right, so we don't have, as I understand it, any body cams, because you guys don't wear body cams. We don't have any recording of any interaction between you and these gentlemen, correct?
I'm sorry, did you ask for
You
it?
don't have any recording of your interactions with either of these two gentlemen,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
Okay. There's no photographs or video of the search of the vehicle and where the vehicle was, correct?
Correct.
And once, I guess, you obtained the keys, you kept the keys and waited for a canine unit to arrive?
Correct.
When the canine unit arrived, did you unlock the door?
I did not.
You still had the keys though, right?
Either myself or Agent DeGiulio had the keys at that point.
Okay.
Mr. Harvey, we're gonna rotate interpreters, so you'll take 2 minutes to review the
Sure.
notes.
I haven't been sworn to the president.
I'll do that too. Do you swear or affirm that you will interpret from English to Spanish and Spanish to English to the best of your ability?
I do.
Thank you, sir. You two are now free to rotate as needed.
Thank you, Judge.
Just let us know when it's happening so we take a pause in the action.
Did you or any other?
They haven't
Oh, I'm
rotated yet.
sorry. Oh, sorry.
Let's do a test. Great, it's working. Back to you, Mr. Harvey.
Thank you. Let me just be clear, you didn't see that vehicle arrive or park or anybody get in or out of that vehicle.
I did not.
Did you participate in, or did you check to whom that vehicle was registered?
I don't recall running the license plate.
Okay. But ordinarily, the license plate would be run, correct?
Correct.
And you have no independent recollection of to whom it was registered and where?
No, I don't.
Okay. The first set of canines, would you disagree that they arrived at approximately 2:15?
That looking at the report, I don't know the specific time.
Okay, well, you reviewed the report this morning, right?
I believe it was 2:15. I didn't look at the report.
Okay.
Statement.
So there was a first team deployed, and then the vehicle was searched, correct?
I believe so.
Nothing was obtained during the first search, correct?
Correct.
Then at some later time, another canine deployed a different canine, another canine handler deployed a different canine. And that canine, there was a second search after that canine deployment as well, correct?
Correct.
And it wasn't until sometime around 4 o'clock at least, and afterwards, that the contraband was located, correct?
If that was the time stated in the report, correct.
Okay. So during this entire time, from at least, let's say 1:45 to 4:15, Mr. Roca was in the model room.
A model apartment, from my understanding.
And he was sitting there.
Yes.
And he was he being watched by any agents?
He did have an agent with him.
I beg your
He
pardon?
did, he had an agent with
Okay.
him.
Now, I think you also told us that you participated in execution of the search warrant, correct?
Correct.
That search warrant wasn't issued, to your recollection and your review of the report, until after 5 o'clock, correct?
Correct.
And at the time the search warrant was signed by the judge and executed by you all, was Mr. Roca under arrest? Formally? Was he formally under arrest?
I had not spoke with him, so I did not,
Okay.
inform him if he was under arrest or not.
Well, did you participate in the second search of the vehicle?
I did.
All right. And did you participate in, were you present when whatever was found was found?
I was.
And then what happened with the two individuals?
I don't know. At that point, I went up to the apartment door to wait for the search warrant to help with the team.
Okay, so you didn't have anything to do with going back and talking to Mr. Roca and Mr. Gonzalez about what was going to happen? All right. Well, what time, to your recollection, did you start the execution of the warrant?
For the residents,
Yeah,
the
Yeah,
residential
for the
search
residents.
warrant, I don't recall.
well, it was clearly after 5, right?
That's what the report states.
Okay, and how did you gain entry?
I believe we had a key to make entry.
Okay, you had a key furnished by whom?
Leasing office is what I believe or recall.
How is the search of the apartment, given that nothing, your client's not charged with anything found in the apartment?
Okay, well, if the state says they're not going to use anything that was found in the apartment, I will withdraw that portion of the motion to suppress. But until they say that, there are a number of things I don't have a return. I just got the warrant this morning. I'm going by the report. But here's what I understand. Members of FIT then made forcible entry into a safe in the apartment. Upon opening the safe, which was apparently located in Mr. Roca's bedroom, FIT members located a large sum of United States currency. I don't know how much, and they don't know how much. Mr. Roca's TWIC card, a Mexican passport, and various Mexican identification cards, and other paraphernalia. So if the state says we ain't gonna use that against them, fine, but that's certainly evidence that is potentially usable.
Sure. So do you know at this point, Ms. Hall, if the state intends to use anything found as a result of the search warrant in its case against Mr. Roca and Mr. Gonzalez?
At this point, Your Honor, we are planning to use the items that was found inside of the apartment.
Okay.
If we were to move forward.
Did you know to bring officers or agents who could talk about the search warrant, the affidavit, et cetera, for today's hearing?
No, Your Honor, I simply was bringing officers for the suppression of the vehicle.
Okay. And Mr. Harvey, of course, didn't know how to file a motion to suppress the fruits of the search of the apartment because he says he didn't have it and I'm taking his word. So Mr. Harvey, you can ask Detective Garcia a little bit about this, but I think we're going to need to regroup so that the state has the right witnesses for the search. And you have a chance to digest the affidavit. You may have things you really want to explore, or you may look at it and say, it is what it is.
Sorry, Your Honor.
It's okay.
So
So you can ask a little more about the search of the apartment, but that's not, my order flowing from today's hearing will not address the validity of the search of the apartment. I don't think we're going to have enough to present today to work through that.
But I'm just getting sort of the contours. You were not the affiant on the search warrant.
I was not.
Did you provide the affiant on the search warrant, and that is Officer L. Moore, with any information?
I did not.
Okay. You just stood by and waited to execute the warrant, correct?
Assistant, correct.
All right. And I understand in executing the warrant, you had a key, correct?
My understanding, yes.
Okay, well, who opened the door? Who was executing the
I did
warrant?
not open the door. I was one of the last people to come in after they had made entries.
Okay, all right. But you understand that there was a key, and did you have a particular location that you designated to search?
No,
Did you participate in opening a safe?
the fire department had to come out there and open the safe.
Okay, and how long was it before the fire department got there to open the safes?
I don't recall time.
Okay, and were you present when the safes were searched?
Yes,
And were you present when items were taken from each of the safes?
yes.
And who was the scrivener? Who was the person that was recording what was taken?
It wasn't me. I don't recall who it was.
Okay. And who made the determination of what to seize and what not to seize?
I did not.
Well, do you know who did?
I can't assume who it was.
And you don't remember who it was? Okay. In a bedroom associated apparently with Mr. Roca, did you seize items from the safe?
There were several of us in the room.
Okay. So the answer is yes, among other people.
I might have witnessed. I don't recall specifically myself seizing it from the safe.
Okay. And once again, who would have written down what it was that was seized?
Wasn't me.
Did you participate in counting however much money there may have been in that particular safe in the bedroom associated with Mr. Roca?
No,
Well, by the way, was Mr. Roca and Mr. Gonzalez still on scene, to your knowledge, during the execution of the?
I don't recall that point.
Judge, at this particular time, I would pass the witness with a reservation of rights as we talked about previously.
Concerning the search warrant.
Yes.
Understood? Ms. Hall, do you have any redirect of Detective Garsh?
Yes, Your Honor, just a few questions.
Okay.
Detective Garsh, I just want to clear up something. So when you were talking to counsel about the keys to the vehicle, can you tell us again, who had the keys to the actual Buick on their person?
I believe it was Mr. Gonzalez, as a refreshment member from the board.
Okay.
I'm object to the I believe. Either he knows or he doesn't know, certainly didn't know a bunch of other things. So I'm objecting to the I believe.
Okay, overruled.
Detective Garsh, the keys were never handed to you personally, isn't it? I mean, were the keys handed to you?
Not directly to me.
The cocaine that was found in the vehicle, was that found prior to the search of the apartment?
Yes.
No further questions from the state, Your Honor.
Ms. Mormon, do you have any follow-up for Detective Garsh?
No, Your Honor.
Detective Garsh, you mentioned that at some point a dog alerted to the rear seat area of the enclave. I didn't realize until Mr. Harvey was asking you some questions that there are actually two different dogs that explored the enclave. Did the first dog, if you know, also alert that people couldn't find things, or only the second dog alerted?
Both dogs alerted. Both dogs showed an interest, from what I recall, on the rear floorboard. There's like a third row seating back there, and they kept specifically getting to a certain area. So at that
I
time,
object to whether he's qualified to determine whether a dog showed interest or alerted or anything about the dog.
I'll give it the appropriate weight. You're free to follow up when he's done answering my question.
I get it, but I don't think he has the ability to make that statement to start with, is my objection.
Okay, and I'll let you follow up on that. You can finish your answer.
the first dog showed interest in the rear of the vehicle. And based on our experience dealing with the DEA level, federal level crimes, we have a lot of vehicles that have trap compartments, concealable areas. So at that point, based on a couple of things, the floor, the way it felt, the way the car looked, different indicators, led us to believe there's probably gonna be a trap compartment in there.
When you say the dog showed interest, was that something you observed, or the handler was relaying to you and whoever else was around the car that Scruffy is really interested in this area?
Both. I've been in law enforcement for 9 years. I've utilized the canine numerous times. And based on what the canine handler also said, that there was a keen interest on that area of the car.
Okay, and this would be the first canine handler. Okay, all right. That's all I had. Mr. Harvey, any follow-up with Detective Garsh?
You place me in a difficult position because I'm sorry, I don't have any dog handler reports. I don't have any dog handler records that I recall. So, I'm in somewhat of a difficult position. And I want to reserve my right to see about this witness's training with regard to alerts.
Okay,
And it's something I can't explore, almost contemporaneously, really. but I'm going to ask some questions at this point. I'm going to reserve my right to ask additional questions. If in your review of Mr. DeGiulio's report, would the first canine deployment be at approximately 2:15?
That's what's stated in the report.
Okay. And who was it?
James, I don't want to mispronounce his last name, Grinnell's.
Okay. And who was the canine?
I don't know the canines, the dog name specifically.
And where did they come from?
Sandy Springs.
All right, so it was a Sandy Springs dog that came downtown.
Correct.
Okay. Did you or anybody else call for a dog prior to the inception of the search?
The dog was already en route, is my understanding.
Okay. Did you call?
I personally did not call the dog.
The dog just showed up at an apartment complex because it gives apartment living?
What was that?
You can ignore it.
Okay.
You didn't call the dog.
No.
Who was leading the investigation at these apartments? Was it Special Agent DeGiulio or Agent DeGiulio?
Yes.
Okay. Were you ever present when he called for the dog?
No.
Do you know what time he called for the dog?
No.
So the dogs didn't get there until 2:15, supposedly, and the first dog went through the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
It went through the vehicle because the vehicle had to be opened in order for the dog to get in. Right?
Are you asking if the
Yes.
dog went inside the vehicle?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And you had the key.
I
You
initially-
opened the door.
Initially, I gave him to Special Agent Julia.
Okay. So Special Agent DeGiulio opened the door for the dog to get inside.
I believe so.
Okay. And after the dog did whatever it did, did it sit? Did it sniff? Did it paw? What did it do?
I don't remember the specific indicators the dog showed.
Okay, all right. And after you don't remember what specific indicators you saw, you'll then look through the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
Didn't find anything at that particular point.
Correct.
There was a second canine handler, correct?
Correct.
Again from Sandy Springs. Who had called the second handler?
I don't recall.
All right. When did the second handler arrive?
I don't know.
And do you know who that was?
Yes.
And who was that?
His name is Mike DeWald.
Okay.
D-E-W.
DEWALD.
Correct.
All right. I'm smiling.
Okay.
You can't say. I was just going to spell it.
Okay.
Do you remember that dog's name?
John.
Okay. So there was a dog, a search. We waited, I guess, for another dog. That dog came, correct?
Correct.
And what indicators did you see the second dog make?
Don't know specific, but it showed keen interest on that same area, the first dog.
Okay. And at that time, another search ensued inside the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
And as a result of that second search inside the vehicle is when you all discovered what you told the court to be a trap, correct?
Correct.
And I'm sorry, that was sometime around 4 o'clock, am I correct?
I don't recall the specific time.
I have nothing further at this point. Judge. Thank you.
Okay. May Detective Garsh step down?
Thank you.
Well, she has to say yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Your Honor, can we take a 5-minute break before we bring in the next witness?
Sure, just let us know when you're ready.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Harvey, I specifically emailed you the email reports myself, and I saw the email this morning. It's in your email.
There's some black hole in the Harvey law firm because the search warrant's not there.
I emailed them everything. I have the case pilot.
Not the search warrant.
I can show you proof of the email. I will not hide anything from you.
I have a copy for you, Mr. Martin, don't worry.
You know, I assume everything in here is easy to take that easier. Right. So we're exploring and understanding. Yeah.
I wouldn't lie about that. Maybe there's a hole. I just saw, yeah.
Yours are the little microphone so that you can hear whoever's up, et cetera. It's just, those don't feed into the larger system.
No, I haven't started. Okay.
Yeah. We can go. Yeah. I've never seen it not work. Judge, did you, I had no idea you lost mute. Yeah.
Hi, how are you doing, Judge?
I'm well, thanks for coming back for this.
Yes, I had this case before, Ms. Hall did, and so I wanted to at least just be here to
It's
help.
very gracious of you to help her out with this. I think this is her first
It is.
witness hearing, maybe with me, and certainly first in many months. So it's good to have a partner.
This is her first big motion.
All right. Good for her.
So, no, she's very like diligent, trying to make sure she knows everything, so.
Well, it's always a curveball, and then one side says, I don't even have these things. I didn't have the case all along, but it sure looks like my predecessor got this stuff to you.
Yes, I have the email. I was looking this morning for case law, and so I was going through my emails to see what I gave, and I have proof that I emailed all the reports to both Aurora's law firm.
Right, well, and they seem to have received it, so.
So, and I know every email was both of them, so, yeah. How's everything else going? I hear that you've been in the court a lot, and a lot of judges have had, like Judge Russell is my judge now, and she's doing everything Zoom, and so this is quite
Yeah,
new
it's-
for a lot of people.
I find it easier to be here, and I want to get folks, as they get comfortable, accustomed to being back in here, because it's gonna happen.
Absolutely.
We will have jury trials eventually,
Okay.
again, so the sooner we can get folks back in, the better. So, did Judge Russell do an inmate calendar, or did she?
She does it every week, but it's all via Zoom.
Well, but last week was the first week to have in-person inmates.
we
Did she
haven't
do
done
that?
No, we haven't done
Okay.
that.
So some of us had inmates come on in and
Oh,
deal with
wow.
things.
Oh, okay.
So we're in a position to do this very type of hearing, but with custodial inmates, which will be helpful because then when it's trial time, they'll be ready to go.
Okay.
There are plenty of folks who've got a rape or a murder defendant not on bond, but they can't get to trial even if we had jurors because they haven't done the suppression motion. So
Sure.
that's the point of allowing, each judge is allowed to bring 4 once a week.
But in Judge Russell's courtroom, there's no screen like that between the defendant and the defense attorney.
She could have it if she wanted it.
Oh, interesting.
There, as you can see, there are a zillion here.
Yeah.
Maybe the extra ones are kept right there, but her staff should reach out to court admin, and you can have it set up however.
Okay.
No, Zuc Paul was mentioning that, she is doing everything remotely.
Yes, everything is via, has not had.
Yeah, she may, maybe she'll never come back to the courthouse. I mean,
No, she's in the courthouse every day. Even when the Zoom, you see her in the courtroom, but no one else is allowed, or people are allowed in, I guess, if they want to sit, but no one else is there. Everyone else is either at the jail Zoom or I'm at my apartment Zoom.
she says you can't come in and be present, or?
I wasn't like you can't, but she said that due to abundance of caution, we're just going to do it.
Got it, interesting. I didn't realize, I thought you were saying she too was remote.
No,
So she should be
She
here,
will sit at the bench and
Got
have it, yeah, streaming YouTube.
and there's
as
just
well.
no one else.
No one else in the courtroom. Yeah.
End of the year.
December, yeah.
Yeah, her term expires last day of 2020.
Yeah.
Tough year to go out on.
I know. Maybe that's why also there's no like push, because you're like, I'm done, you know,
Yeah.
kind of thing, yeah.
That will become Judge Lethbridge's docket.
Yes. I'm interested to see what, because I don't know much about, because Judge Lethbridge was in magistrate, and so I never did like the first appearance or any of that stuff for non-complex. And so it's gonna be interesting to see.
She will have a very shallow learning curve, having done non-complex. She did non-complex all the way up to trial, then didn't never have trials in non-complex, but I think she'll be able to get going pretty readily, which will be good for you and the PDs, because she's not gonna need lots of guidance.
Right, as opposed to like a
medical
civil judge,
Right.
yeah. Well, if I'm still in that program, who knows?
Who knows?
What's gonna
There's a
happen.
lot of change coming in January,
Yes, there is.
if not earlier.
Yes. But I definitely want to try a case in your courtroom. I'm interested to see how the questions from the jury come up, because you're very famous for the questions from the jury.
It goes very well as the answer. Or you can ask Mr. Harvey. It's one of the
He
bases.
doesn't like it though, I
He
think.
does not. It's one of the bases of the appeal in the MacGyver case. Even though the Supreme Court has said, look, if
Right.
you do it that way, it's okay.
Yeah.
Why not try again?
Oh, man. Oh, so I didn't know they had filed appeal. Okay.
Well, the motion for new trial, we haven't heard the motion for new trial yet, because the record was so big, they wanted a long time, and then your office has gone through a couple of appellate attorneys.
Yes, I'm
So,
sure.
We'll see
I'm
when we
surprised, yeah.
finally hear it.
Yeah, I like, when I first heard about you doing that, I did look up the case law. There's clear case law that says that it's allowable as long as it's not any question that's inadmissible evidence to come out.
As long as it's filtered through the judge and the attorneys have a chance to object.
Yes.
It was kind of clear, but then I started doing it, and one of those cases went up on appeal, and they said specifically that approach is okay.
Oh, good.
So,
Okay.
That's all I have to cite in the motions for new trial when I'm ruling. It says, see, Hernandez versus State. You can do this.
Yeah. No, I like it because it's like, anything that the prosecutor or defense may have missed and that the jury really wants to hear and know, and it may help them in their deliberations.
Exactly. It lifts the blinders off.
Exactly.
All right, let's see if we can get folks back.
Let me see if I can call Ms. Hall.
Is Mr. Harvey out there? Oh, yeah, let's bring him back in, please. Ms. Mormon, are you ready?
Yes, Your Honor, we're ready.
Okay, we're gonna try to get everyone back in here.
Richard, I'm going to sit in the jury box, Miss Easy, for me. to
Sure.
hear everybody better.
Wherever works best
Thank
for
you.
you.
I get to submit it to the jury.
You should get used to submitting to the jury behind you. It's gonna be an interesting dynamic, but when we start trials, the jurors are gonna be behind you. You'll be able to have little secret messages carved into your hair. They'll be able to see it all day long.
And when's that gonna be?
Soon. Ms. Hall, you ready with your next witness?
Your Honor, the state called Special Agent Ransom to the stand.
Sir, before we get started, I'm gonna do a switcheroo with you if you don't mind. It works better for, we have one defendant and lawyer, who will be on screen in front of you as well, who's appearing remotely. And for audio purposes, if you don't mind not wearing a mask, as long as you take it out for a second, I'll put mine on and then you'll have that area safe for you. But we found with Detective Garsh, it helped a lot if he was without a mask for folks to be able to hear. Is that all right with you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Great, well, we'll switch.
All right, raise your right hand for me. Do you swear or affirm the testimony given the court the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Can you please spell and state your name for the record?
Robert Ransom Jr., ROBERTRANSOM Jr., Special Agent with Drug Enforcement Administration.
You may have a seat.
Yes, sir.
All right, Special Agent Grant, how you doing today?
I'm good. Can't complain now.
So we're trying to project to this TV screen, not the microphone in front of you, so if you can just speak loudly, so that defense counsel and defendant on Zoom can hear you as well.
Okay.
Can you, please tell us where you currently work?
I work at the Drug Enforcement Administration Atlanta Division here in Atlanta, Georgia.
And how long have you worked with them?
Approximately 10 years.
And, what are some of your duties with the agency?
Investigating Title 21 and Title 18 violations.
Does that also include any, narcotic investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you post certified?
No, ma'am.
You're not, okay. Were you asked to respond to a location, involving a search warrant on an apartment complex on December the sixth, 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that address 3380 Peachtree Road, Northeast, apartment 1104?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that in Fulton County?
Yes, ma'am.
What happened when you arrived at that location?
I arrived on scene with TFO Garsh in the lobby of the apartment complex or complex. And there were two gentlemen with some additional agents they initially made contact. But the two gentlemen were still somewhat together, so I was just called for additional body to come in for officer safety, public safety.
Okay, so just to be clear, so you were on your way to this apartment for the purposes of securing what were you on your way to the apartment for?
For officer safety and just assistance with the two defendants that were.
No, I'm sorry, I may not be clear. When you initially went to this apartment complex, what were you going to the apartment complex for?
What do you mean, like when I?
Before encountering any of the defendants, what was the purpose of you going to 3880 U Street?
To secure the location for the warrant.
Okay, and when you got there, did you initially go straight into the lobby and encounter the officers? Like, I heard you mention you were called for assistance.
Yeah, the officers on scene just requested some additional people to come in, just assist with the two defendants that were in the lobby.
So you didn't encounter the defendants when you initially arrived, someone called you?
Right.
Was that over a radio or was that over a telephone?
It was over the radio.
Radio.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember where you were when you got the call?
I was parked in the front lot.
Okay, so you were already parked at the apartment complex. When you went into the lobby, what did you started to say that the defendants were somewhat together. What did you observe when you initially walked into the lobby?
Special Agent DeJulio, myself and Garsh, and I can't remember, it might have been someone else, talking to the defendants when I initially walked in, and I was just instructed, hey, would you mind taking this gentleman to the side because we want to just talk to him. I can't remember his name, but they just wanted to just kind of keep them separated so that they couldn't talk to each other, or, because I didn't understand Spanish, and I don't think TFO Garsh did either.
So was someone talking in Spanish when you approached the defendant?
Yes, ma'am.
You say you don't remember their names. Do you remember what the defendant looked like that was talking in Spanish?
No, I don't.
Did you talk to that individual at all?
Not the one in Spanish, there was a gentleman that spoke English.
Okay.
That's the one that I spoke.
Do you know if the one that you never spoke with, do you know if he only spoke Spanish or did he also speak English?
I believe that he may have spoke broken English, but primarily Spanish.
So you said that you were asked to separate the individual that you were with. Do you remember his name?
No, ma'am.
Okay, the individual that you separated, what happened when you guys separated?
We brought him to the corner of the lobby. And the gentleman was handcuffed, again, for officer safety and public safety.
Was he already handcuffed when you encountered him, or you were involved in handcuffing him?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, we were involved in handcuffing, just, because we didn't know if he had any weapons or anything like that. So once we took him to the corner and got him separated from the other individual, I said, hey, do you have anything in your pockets? I'm gonna unhandcuff you because you appear to be cooperative, didn't appear to have any type of aggressive movements. I said, do you have anything in your pockets? He said, yes. And I said, would you mind taking them out of your pocket?
Why did you ask him if he had anything in his pocket?
That's just as a general practice, for, again, officer safety, because nobody patted him, we didn't do any type of pat down on the wrist or anything like that. I just want to make sure they were weapons or contraband.
So when you said they were handcuffed for officer safety, when you first encountered them, they were not in handcuffs?
Correct.
And then at some point, they were placed in handcuffs for officer safety.
Correct.
But then you guys removed the handcuffs to allow them to go
Let
into.
me object to the form of this question.
And you're concerned with the form, other than that you don't like it?
No, I'm concerned with the form because the question not only suggests an answer, it gives an answer.
Okay. I was hearing Ms. Hall restating what was just said and then moving to the next spot, but I'll focus more intently on that and weigh in if needed. Overrule, continue.
Special Agent Brown, when you said that the individuals were placed into handcuffs for the safety of officers, you also stated that they were eventually uncuffed so that they can go into their pockets. And I asked you, what was the purpose of you allowing him to go in his pocket? Can you continue with that?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. I think there was an interplay between them and him in that question. I understood this officer to talk about him, not a them.
So let's be clear with the them and hims, because we've got now at least 3 officers, agents in the lobby, and 2 defendants. So it will help for record purposes as well as subsequent cross-examination if we make clear the them and him you're referring to as all.
I'm sorry here. Special Agent. Do you see the individual that you were speaking with either in the courtroom or on the Zoom monitors today? And if you do, can you tell the judge where they are located and what kind of clothing they have?
I believe it's the gentleman on the bottom right.
And what is he wearing?
Looks like a blue button-up shirt.
And is there someone else in the frame with him?
Yes, ma'am.
Is a female?
Female.
And is this the individual that you were speaking with, that you pulled over to the side when you were in the lobby that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And was he later identified as Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So when you initially went into the lobby, both Mr. Rocha, who you were not speaking with, and Mr. Gonzalez, they were not handcuffed, right?
Correct.
At some point, someone, either yourself or the other officers that were there, did take them in handcuffs for the safety of all.
Correct.
When you separated the individuals and you were alone with Ms., or not alone, but over to the side with Mr. Gonzalez, at what point was he unhandcuffed? When the handcuffs were removed from him?
Like almost, I wouldn't say immediately, but, I remember saying, hey, I'm gonna take these cuffs off, he appeared cooperative. I said, but before I take these cuffs off, do you have anything in your pocket that, contraband or drugs or anything like that? He was like, I have stuff in my pocket. And so I took the handcuffs off and said, well, just take the stuff out your pocket just to make sure you don't have no weapons or anything like that. And the gentleman began taking stuff out of his pockets and putting it on the windowsill.
Did you have, did you believe that the gentleman had something on him or?
Well, when myself and Agent Garsh were over there with the gentleman, I did notice an odor of marijuana off his clothes.
And when you smelled the odor of marijuana, you said that so you smelled the marijuana and then is that when you asked him about going into his pockets and you handcuffed him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you smelled the marijuana first, spoke with the safety of the officers, which you went ahead and uncuffed him so that he can retrieve whatever was in his pocket.
Right. I just wanted to make sure there was nothing in his pockets that could harm us.
Okay, so when you say you placed everything that was in his pocket onto the window ledge, what was some of the things that he?
A cell phone, I believe a lighter and a cigarillo package. And I took the cigarillo package just to make sure there was nothing in there, but there was some marijuana in the cigarillo package. I know that people usually, not usually, but that's a concealed place for it.
And so when you retrieved the cigarillo package and you did discover the marijuana, at that point was Mr. Gonzalez placed under arrest or detained for further questioning?
He was just detained for further questions.
Do you know if did he remain there in the lobby or was he taken anywhere else?
He was taken by other agents to another location.
Do you know if he was going to eventually be charged for the marijuana that was found inside of his pocket?
That I honestly don't know.
Before he was moved over, before he was transported somewhere else, where was the other defendant that was talking to the officer? Where was he at?
Adjacent on the other side of the lobby.
Was he close enough where you could hear conversations, or was he, okay, you could hear conversations between him and which officer was talking to him?
I know it was Agent Julio.
And could you hear any of the questions that were being asked of him by officers or Agent Julio?
Yes, ma'am. It was, I believe, consent questions.
Consent to do what?
I believe consent to search.
I think and I believe.
And you get to follow up on what he thought or believed.
I object to him being allowed to say something about which he only thought or believed.
Okay, overruled.
Mr. Ransom, Special Agent Ransom, did you ever hear the defendant that was talking to Officer DeJulio give consent to search on the vehicle?
Not to my recollection.
Your Honor, I have no further questions for Special Agent Ransom.
All right. Ms. Mormon, do you have questions for Special Agent Ransom?
Yes, Your Honor. Agent Ransom, you said you were called to the scene basically as backup.
Correct.
Did you arrive to the scene with Officer Garsh, or was he already there?
I arrived a little later after him. Like it wasn't too much of a time gap, but we were pretty much minutes apart.
So when you arrived to the scene, Agent or Officer Garsh was already speaking to the two gentlemen in the lobby? The co-defendants, not the employees.
Yes, ma'am. He'd already began talking, and I was soon thereafter into the lobby.
Do you know how long he had been speaking with them prior to you arriving?
No, ma'am, I don't know.
Once you arrived, you said that they were not cuffed yet.
Correct.
And when you arrived, essentially, you helped cuff at least Mr. Gonzalez.
Correct.
At that point, had you identified Mr. Gonzalez?
And did I what?
Have you identified him? Did you ask him his name? Did you know his name?
No, I didn't know his name as of yet.
Did you know why he was there?
Did I know what?
Did you, at that point, did you know why he was at the apartment complex?
I wasn't fully briefed on everything as to why. I mean, I just, like I said, it was back and forth
So you didn't know his name, you didn't know why he was there, but you cuffed him essentially for officer safety.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have any reason to believe your safety was an issue at that point?
Well, there was a ratio of one defendant to one agent officer. So that's just standard practice. We like to usually use 2 people with 1 person.
I'm sorry, I may have misheard you. You said at that point there was a ratio of 1 to 1?
Yeah, 1 defendant with 1 officer or 1 agent. Usually we like to do stuff in tandem. When we're handling a defendant, we like to at least have at least 2 people at a minute.
Okay, when you arrived, how many officers or agents were actually on the scene in the lobby?
That I've been so long, I don't remember how many were already in the lobby a couple years ago.
Okay, so upon approaching Mr. Gonzalez, did you identify yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
You identified yourself as a DEA agent,
Yes, ma'am. I have my badge on my neck.
and you told Mr. Gonzalez, well, essentially you put him under arrest at that point. You cuffed him.
I mean, I did not cuff him.
You were not the agent. You didn't testify that you actually cuffed Mr. Gonzalez?
No, ma'am. I don't remember saying that I cuffed him, but I know he was put in handcuffs.
You know who did?
It was Agent Waters. I mean, again, Your Honor,
If you don't remember, you don't remember?
yeah, I honestly don't remember, but I know he was put in cuffs.
Okay.
So upon your arriving, Mr. Gonzalez is put in cuffs prior to being identified, prior to even your knowledge of why he's at the apartment. You brought Mr. Gonzalez to the corner of the lobby?
Yes, you just walk him to the corner of the lobby just to give some distance between him and Mr. Roach, I believe.
And once in the corner of the lobby, as he's cuffed, you ask him if he had any weapons or anything on him.
Correct.
At that time, he stated he did have something on him.
Yes, I asked him, did he have anything in his pockets, any
Mhm.
weapons or anything like that? And he's like, yes, I have stuff in my pockets.
He didn't state he had any weapons in his pockets.
No, he didn't say I have weapons in my pocket. I just said, do you have anything in your pockets?
Okay, once he stated he did have something in his pockets, did you ask him what was in his pockets?
No, ma'am. I asked him, I said, would you mind emptying your pockets for me?
But at this time, he's cuffed.
Yeah, we took the handcuffs off and he retrieved the items from his pocket.
Mr. Gonzalez physically went in his pocket and retrieved everything that was in his pocket.
Yes, ma'am.
An officer did not go in his pockets.
No, ma'am.
And what did he do with the items that were in his pockets?
Put them on the window ledge where we were. There was a window sill.
Was there a table around by any chance?
Not that I can remember. I don't remember that.
And this is still all in the lobby. At this point, Mr. Gonzalez had not been brought anywhere else.
Correct.
Okay. Once the cuffs were removed, he emptied his pockets. Was he placed back in cuffs at that time?
No, ma'am.
So at this point, he was never put back in cuffs.
No, ma'am, because he was being compliant and, just waiting, just standing there. We weren't asking any questions. We were just standing there waiting for the next director.
Okay. Did you assist in taking Mr. Gonzalez to the showroom?
No, ma'am.
Were you ever in the showroom?
No.
Did you further question Mr. Gonzalez aside from asking to, if he had anything in his pockets?
No, ma'am.
What time did you arrive to the scene, if you recall?
I don't remember.
You don't know, you have no idea what time you arrived?
I don't remember what time I arrived, ma'am.
Once you left, once Mr. Gonzalez, how long was Mr. Gonzalez in the lobby before he was brought to the showroom?
Again, I don't know the exact time.
I'm not asking the time, I'm asking like approximate amount of time.
I would say approximately, is there maybe 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes?
And in the 20 minutes after he emptied his pockets, was there any more dialogue, conversation between you and Mr. Gonzalez?
No, ma'am.
Were you essentially the officer that was with Mr. Gonzalez in the lobby?
Myself and Gosh.
And do you recall which officer brought him to the showroom after he left the lobby?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you know if Mr. Gonzalez was, I can't recall if this was asked already, if he was actually charged with that marijuana that was in his pocket?
That I don't know.
Okay. Did you pat Mr. Gonzalez down while he was cuffed?
No, ma'am.
Did Officer Garsh pat Mr. Gonzalez down while he was cuffed?
No, ma'am.
No officer patted Mr. Gonzalez down.
No, ma'am. I don't think none of us did.
And you asked him about the contents in his pocket just for caution?
Yes, ma'am. Before I've taken the cuffs off, I said, do you have anything in your pockets?
Did you have reason to believe there was anything in Mr. Gonzalez's pockets?
But that's just standard that when you have somebody, you know. when you
Well,
take-
no, I understand that. That wasn't my question. My question was, I understand that standard protocol, but did you, being with Mr. Gonzalez, did you have reason to believe there was anything in his pockets other than just standard protocol?
Ma'am, I didn't know what he could have in his pockets or not. So
No, I understand that that wasn't the question. I understand that you don't know what he could have. I'm asking if you had reason to believe he had anything in his pockets at that time. Just simple yes or no.
I mean, honestly, and not trying to be smart, but you know, anybody can have anything in their pocket, so I.
Okay.
Anybody.
Okay. When Mr. Gonzalez removed the items in his pockets, did he remove a pair of car keys?
No, I believe it was a cell phone, lighter, and the cigarette package.
And that was it. At that point, his pockets were empty, as far as you know.
As far as I know, yeah.
Officer Ransom, did you have a body cam on at this time? Excuse me?
No,
Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Did you at any time ask Mr. Gonzalez how he got to the apartment?
no,
And you didn't see Mr. Gonzalez arrive at that apartment complex?
no, ma'am.
Okay. Did you take part in the, so Mr. Gonzalez is taken by another officer essentially to a showroom. You weren't there.
Correct.
You stayed in the lobby at this time?
No, I departed the lobby once I wasn't needed.
Once you departed the lobby, did you go to the apartment to secure the apartment?
No, ma'am.
Did you go to the parking garage?
Did I what?
Did you go to the parking garage?
I returned to my vehicle.
Okay. Were you present for the, when the K-9 arrived, the first K-9 arrived?
No, ma'am.
So you were not, you played no role in the search of the vehicle or with the K-9s or anything of that nature?
Correct.
After you returned to your vehicle, did you stay on the scene and did you leave?
I just stayed on the scene just in case there was anything else that was needed.
Do you know about how long you stayed on the scene?
No, I don't know exact amount of time.
So from the time Mr. Gonzalez is removed from the lobby and taken to the showroom, you went back to your vehicle. Did you stay in your vehicle during this entire time?
Yes, ma'am.
Agent Ransom, did you identify at any time Mr. Gonzalez's actual identity?
Can you ask that a different way? I don't understand what you mean by that.
I apologize. What I'm asking is, you've stated, you testified that upon coming to the lobby, you hadn't identified, like you didn't know Mr. Gonzalez's name. Aside from not knowing his name, you didn't know why he was there prior to putting cuffs on him. So I'm asking, any point while you were there with Mr. Gonzalez in the lobby, were you able to identify him, get his name, run his name, anything of that nature?
No, I did not run his name. The officers that encountered him first said, hey, this gentleman, they're together. That's all that I was given.
Okay, nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Harvey, questions for Agent Ransom?
I don't think so, thank you.
Any redirect?
I just have one question, Your Honor. Special Agent Ransom, when you approached, Lieutenant Gonzalez, did you smell odor of marijuana?
Yes, ma'am.
No person.
Ms. Mormon, anything else for Agent Ransom?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, may Agent Ransom be excused?
You can, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here. Call your next witness.
The state Special Agent James DeJulia.
You raise your right hand for me. Do you swear upon the testimony given the court the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Spell and state your name for the record.
Special Agent James DeJulio, Gigiulio.
All right, have a seat for me.
Agent Julia, I'm gonna ask if you're all right with it, that you not wear your mask when you testify, because we'll be able to hear you a lot better. None of the microphones in front of you do what they're supposed to do. So your voice is picked up by that big screen, that you can't see real well. So just project and, we will take it from there. I appreciate it. Ms. Hall?
Good morning, Special Agent DeJulia. How you doing? Where are you currently? Where do you currently work?
I'm a special agent with DEA in Atlanta,
And how long have you been with the DEA?
since 2014.
And what are some of your duties with the DEA?
Well, as special agent, I had regular special agent duties, carry enforcement operations for Title 21, Title 18, and then additionally,
Excuse me, I need you to speak up as well.
I have collateral duties as well, of a special response team, clandestine laboratory team, I'm also a medic. So quite a few duties.
Just, some of your duties include, dealing with narcotics.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you post-certified?
No.
Did you respond to the apartment, do you respond to an apartment complex, Zion apartment that involved, securing a search warrant
Yes, ma'am.
on December 6, 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that in Fulton County?
Yes, ma'am.
Was anyone at the apartment complex when you arrived?
No.
Any fellow officers?
No, I'm the first to arrive.
Okay. When you arrived, what did you do?
I went to approach management to see if they would be cooperative with us after we've obtained a search warrant.
When you say cooperative, what do you mean?
If they would provide us access to the floor, to the building, so that we wouldn't have to do any unnecessary damage to their building.
Is there any other protocol that you normally take when securing an apartment complex?
Yes, ma'am.
Waiting on a search warrant?
Once there's a pending immediate search warrant, yes.
And what are some of those protocols?
It depends on the apartment complex. In this particular case in Cyan, we decided that we felt confident that management would be cooperative with us.
While you were speaking with the management, did anyone approach to try to get into the apartment complex that you were trying to secure one for?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you know that someone tried to gain access to that apartment?
As I was talking to the primary management lady, I don't remember her name. One of the assistant managers came in
and was talking to another assistant manager saying that there was 2 individuals that were trying to obtain a key, but they were not on the key access list.
Okay. So when you said she came over, were you and the manager located somewhere different from the individuals who came in to obtain keys?
They have offices within the lobby.
Okay, so you were inside the office with the manager?
Within the offices, yes, ma'am. So like as you walk into the lobby, there would be like a main office and then individual offices on top of that, from what I remember.
So when you heard that individuals were trying to access the same apartment that you were trying to secure one for, what did you do after that?
I asked the assistant manager to not obviously give them a key, which he wasn't able to anyway, because as I stated previously, they were not on the key access list. But then at that point, I made contact with my other agents who were parking their vehicles so that we could address the situation.
Did you ever get confirmation from the manager that you were either speaking with or the assistant manager as to whether these individuals were listed on the lease for that particular apartment?
I'm sorry, I don't
That's
know.
what you don't start.
Yeah,
Did you ever gain information whether these 2 individuals were on the lease of that apartment?
yes, they were not on the list on the apartment.
So you said you radioed and called fellow officers who were parking. Did they eventually come into the Saigon apartment where you were located?
Yeah,
At that point, where were the defendants located?
in the lobby in the foyer.
So were they just still standing there waiting for the assistant manager to
That's right.
return? Okay. So then what happened after that? Did the officers that you called in, did they come approach you or did they approach you?
Yeah, they came to me, what point I explained to them what was happening, and they went outside and made contact with the 2 individuals.
When you approached the 2 individuals, did you smell the odor of marijuana?
I did not know them.
Did you talk to both individuals that were there?
Yes, ma'am.
The individuals that you spoke with that day, do you see them either in the courtroom or on the screen, the Zoom screen in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am. One right there.
I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you identify them to the court by pointing to or identify what they're wearing and who they're sitting beside?
Yeah, one gentleman is right there.
So they're in court or on screen?
One of them's right there wearing the, I believe that's gray, mask, and headphones. Sitting next to who I would presume to be his counselor. And there's your other individual right there who's sitting next to this blonde lady here, and that also looks gray, but not me.
Okay.
And are both these individuals the ones that you made contact with and were requesting access to the apartment 1104?
Yes, as far as I can tell with the mask.
Your Honor, the record reflects that Special Agent Julio has identified both defendants as individuals that were requesting keys.
Yes.
Thank you. So once you approached both individuals, what happened after that?
Well, we confirmed that they were in fact going to our subject apartment, and at that point, they were going to be detained for further investigation as to why their presence was there.
And when you say detained, what that detention itself, were they actually placed in handcuffs or were you guys just talking to them?
I did not personally put anybody in handcuffs, and whether or not my other fellow agents did was up to them as their comfort level dictates.
And when you say that they were detained, why were they detained?
Because it's standard procedure for us that when we're in the process of obtaining a search warrant, particularly for something that involved an immediate incident within the last few hours, that we'll make sure that there is nobody going to or from a suspected location, in this particular case, the apartment. Because in our training and experience, we realize that often those individuals make phone calls to other individuals in the organization to clear out money, drugs, evidence, any sort of evidence of crime.
Did either of these defendants, when they were speaking with you, did they tell you that they either lived in that apartment or should have had access to that apartment?
Yes, sir.
Which, do you remember which individual?
Yeah, I believe it's that individual right there, sitting in the courtroom.
In the actual courtroom, okay. And when he was communicating with you, was that in English, Spanish?
It was in both English and Spanish.
And are you able to understand both English and
Yes,
Spanish?
sir.
Did they tell you either defendant tell you how they arrived to the Sinai apartment?
Yes, ma'am. We asked them how they got to the apartments and said that they were in black Buick conflict.
And, you said that the defendant in the courtroom did say that he had business in that apartment. What did he say he needed?
I said that he needed his IDs, if I remember correctly, and that he lived there and they were obviously in the apartment.
When they told you what they came came to the apartments and did, at that point, what happened?
We obtained consent to search the vehicle,
And how did you?
and then they provided us with the keys to search the vehicle.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. When you say you obtained consent, how was that consent obtained?
Verbally?
Did you just ask, I'm sorry, did you just ask the defendant, can you search the vehicle or?
Yeah.
And which defendant was that?
That individual is currently sitting
In the courtroom?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you do after you asked for consent to search the vehicle?
I provided us consent and then also provided the keys.
And did you ask for consent once, twice, or was it?
If I remember correctly, I asked twice, once in English and once in Spanish.
And, so he handed you, which individual actually had the keys to the Buick in their possession?
If I remember correctly, the defendant sitting in the courtroom had the keys, which was at the time, I believe, placed on like the little table there that they had in the lobby. At which point, TFO Garth received the keys and then physically turned and handed them to me.
At any point, did the individual that gave you consent to search the vehicle, did he take back that consent?
No,
Did he tell you he was the one driving the vehicle? Or
yes,
After he gave you consent, what happened after that?
we went and tried to locate the vehicle, found the vehicle. At that point, we had a canine that was in the area, do an open air sniff on the vehicle, subsequent interior sniff, and then we proceeded to search the vehicle.
Before I get to the canine and what they did, when you say you had to locate the vehicle, did the defendant tell you where the vehicle was located?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do you know if that was located in a visitor's location of that apartment complex, or was it in a gated?
So that particular complex has a gated place that you can only gain access with key fob or with, for example, a call box, something like where you punch in a number, forward to, say, your phone, and you would then press, say star or whatever the case may be to gain access. So there has to be given access at that exact precise moment, whether you use a key fob or your phone.
And the car was located behind the gate?
That's correct.
And you parked your car behind the gate as well? In other words, to get to the leasing office, someone had to buzz you in.
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, not necessarily, sir. If I understand your question, you could park, there's, let's say, a cutout for FedEx or something like that. So at that point, I could go into the leasing office. I could obtain access to the leasing office, and then the leasing office.
Were you already buzzed in? In other words, your car was on the inside of the gate, or were you on the outside?
To be honest with you, sir,
Okay, but your recollection is that the enclave was on the inside of the gate.
I know for certain.
Okay.
So when you were given consent by the defendant to search the vehicle, you said you still had canine come out. Was canine called at the point of the consent, or when were they?
No, K9 was already en route to the scene. Oftentimes, we have magistrates that will ask us to perform a canine sniff on a door in an apartment complex. So at that point, I already had a canine en route to the apartment complex to conduct that sniff. It's just something that a lot of magistrate judges prefer in their search warrants.
Can you remember about how long it took the canine to arrive after you guys located the vehicle?
If I remember correctly, from the time that consent was given or the approach was made until it was on scene, if I'm not mistaken, it was probably somewhere around a half hour.
Do you remember how long the conversation lasted in the lobby when you were initially asking questions and consent was given?
No more than 10 to 15 minutes.
When K9 arrived, were you by the vehicle or were you with the defendant?
If I remember correctly, I was in the lobby.
Okay, when they arrived, were the defendants ever taken from the lobby, to patrol car or anywhere else?
Yes, ma'am, I asked management if they had an empty apartment that we could use to get everybody out of the view of the public. They afforded us not luxury, but they afforded us the ability to work with law enforcement, so I wanted to return the favor and make sure that I wasn't causing a scene in the middle of their lobby.
Okay, so the room wasn't for the purpose of questioning the defendant?
No, ma'am, it was just to get everybody out of the general view of the public.
Did anybody question the defendants to your knowledge when they weren't, taken over to the apartment complex room?
I was not in the room, ma'am, I cannot tell you.
So you were on scene when K-9 arrived, did you actually go out to the vehicle, when K-9 got there?
Yes.
Do you know if the K-9 dog alerted to the vehicle, or did you guys go to the vehicle before K-9?
I was told by Officer Reynolds, who's the K-9 handler, that the dog alerted.
Okay. And after the dog alerted to the vehicle, what happened after?
We subsequently searched the vehicle.
Was anything located inside the vehicle?
Yes.
What was located inside the vehicle?
We found a trap compartment or a hidden compartment that we commonly refer to as a trap under the third row seating of the enclave that contained narcotics.
So when you say something was located, the trap was located, or I just want to understand when you said something was located from the K-9 search, was the trap door located at that point, or was drugs located? Or something else located, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not sure I understand your question, but if I do understand it, the K-9 alerted to the presence of narcotics somewhere within the vehicle at some given point in time fairly recently, if not at that very moment. That I understand your question.
Was there a second K-9 that was dispatched to the location?
Yes, ma'am.
And why was the second K-9 dispatched?
So once the first K-9 alerted to the vehicle, we began to search the vehicle. We thought we knew with fairly confident that there was a trap. But I brought in a second K-9 at my discretion because I felt as though we could confirm the original K-9, but also possibly pinpoint this maybe even more so. And both K-9s alerted to what eventually we found out to be the door of the trap.
So after both K-9s indicated that there was narcotics around presently, currently, prior to, did you guys search the vehicle at that point?
We continued to search the vehicle, but we also targeted it a little bit more. It's not like I was searching the dashboard, for example. I knew within a reasonable area where the trap may or may not be located.
Do you remember where that area was in that particular vehicle?
Yeah, it was under the third row back seat.
What did you find?
We found 4 kilos of suspected cocaine at the time.
During the time where one K-9 was called out, the second K-9 was called out, do you know if either defendant took back the consent?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Were you notified by any of the officers that were with the defendant that they no longer wanted you to search?
No, ma'am, I was not.
Once you found the drugs in the car, what happened with the defendant?
They were arrested at that point and read the rights.
And do you remember, what agency, that was that process them and arrested them?
That processed them was Atlanta PD.
And was APD, the Atlanta Police Department, were they also the ones that transported them to jail?
Yes, ma'am.
And to your knowledge, the officer that did that was post-certified?
Yes, ma'am.
After the defendants were transported, did you eventually obtain a search warrant to the apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you guys eventually go into that apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
One moment. Just a few more questions, special individual. When you gave access to the apartment, building, the actual location, 1104, did you find anything inside the apartment complex? I mean, inside of the apartment? The apartment itself,
Did I find evidence or did I find a defendant?
evidence of anything inside of it?
Yes, ma'am. We found quite a bit of evidence.
What did you?
From my recollection, we found quite a large sum of United States currency, as well as money counters, drug ledgers, things of that nature.
Do you remember if $82,000 was located inside of that?
I believe there was 8,000 located in the safe.
Do you know any of the safes that was located inside of this apartment was, belonged or associated with either defendant that was in the lobby asking for access to that
If
apartment?
I remember correctly, there was 2 safes, one in each individual bedroom.
It was, I'm sorry, I
There
didn't.
was 2 safes located, one in each bedroom.
And in either of the safes, did it pertain information to either of the defendants that were trying to gain access to the apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
Which defendant?
We had a defendant that's sitting in the corner.
Do you remember what item that?
If I remember correctly, it was a twin card, which is an ID that gets you on and off ports, American ports. For example, Port of Savannah, something like that, as well as passport stuff of that nature.
No further questions. Special agent, Your Honor, the statement.
Can you
No further questions.
tweet, what are the letters for that card?
Where's that? I believe WIC, TWI, either C or X.
It's the TWIC.
Quick.
Okay, thank you.
And can we take a quick 5, Judge?
If it is 5 or less, the last break ended up morphing out. Okay, sure, we're gonna take a 3-minute break. Sure. High security.
Yeah.
We'll wait for you. Forte, you ready?
Yes, Judge.
Ms. Mormon, do you have questions for Special Agent Julio?
Yes, Your Honor, I do. Agent, is it DeJulio?
Yes, ma'am.
Julio? You were the first to arrive to the apartment complex, correct?
I'm sorry?
You were the first to arrive at the apartment complex?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were by yourself at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you did arrive, you approached management to request cooperation.
That's correct.
And at that point, you were still by yourself.
That's also correct.
Okay. While speaking to management and the assistant manager, I think you said, came and stated that two individuals were requesting keys to apartment 1104. Were you able to see the two individuals?
Yes, ma'am.
So when the apartment or the assistant manager came with that request, you were able to see what individuals were making that request?
That's correct. It's a glass offices.
Okay. At that point, you requested that they did not allow the individuals to get a key, correct?
That's also correct. But even if I was unable to request that, they still could not get it because they were not on the key release.
Correct, correct. After you were done speaking with management, you approached these two individuals yourself, correct?
No, ma'am.
You did not approach them.
I did not approach them myself, ma'am. No.
At what point did you approach the two individuals that were requesting keys?
After my fellow two agents made contact already.
And which agents were those?
TFO Danny Garsh, as well as Special Agent Rob Ransom.
So Agent Garsh and Agent Ransom approached you called for backup first?
Yes, presumably, yeah.
Right, so once Agent Garsh and Agent Ransom arrived, they actually approached those two individuals
First, yes, ma'am.
first. And how were they able to identify those are the individuals you were speaking of?
Because I pointed them out.
Okay, so you pointed the individuals out, but you didn't actually approach the individuals with the two agents.
I did, but I was not the first contacting agent.
I guess I'm a little confused. Did you approach the two individuals all together, or did the two agents approach them first and then you joined?
Correct. You're second, the latter.
The latter, okay. So once you joined, you spoke yourself to both of these defendants, correct?
That's correct.
And you spoke to defendant Gonzalez yourself.
At one point or another, yes, ma'am.
Was this before or after defendant Gonzalez, or were both defendants were cuffed?
I could not recall now.
Were you were present when both of the Agent Garsh and Agent Ransom approached the defendants, correct?
I was within.
I mean, meaning you could see them approach the
Yes.
defendants. So upon you approaching yourself, you're not sure at this point if they had already cuffed the defendants?
That's correct. I could not tell you without, yes.
Do you know which agent cuffed defendant Gonzalez?
I do not.
So when you approached defendant Gonzalez, you spoke to him yourself,
Yes,
and this was in the lobby still.
yes.
You testified you did not smell the odor of marijuana on either defendant, but defendant Gonzalez, correct?
I'm sorry, restate your question.
You just testified that you did not smell the odor of marijuana on defendant Gonzalez when you
Yes.
spoke with him. You did not smell the odor of marijuana. When you were present, or in speaking with defendant Gonzalez, did you confirm why he was at that apartment complex?
I was confirmed with both of them that they were there to obtain different documents out of the apartment.
Mr. Gonzalez stated that he had documents in that apartment.
No.
Did he, do you recall him telling you why he was actually present there?
Without any certainty of exact words, I would say that he was just along for the ride.
He was along for the ride, and he stated to you that he arrived to that complex?
That's correct. Yeah, he was the passenger in the vehicle.
And he stated that to you, that he was a passenger in a vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were you present when Mr. Gonzalez essentially was searched? Or not searched, were you present when he, I guess, at some point, were you present when he was asked if he had any weapons or contraband or anything on him, on his person?
Don't believe so. I might have still been talking to the management at that point.
Okay, so you're unaware if either of the defendants were cuffed when you approached them at that point, you don't recall?
I don't recall if they were handcuffed prior to me being there or after.
And you stated that essentially cuffing these individuals was protocol.
I don't believe I stated that.
Or, well, in obtaining the search warrant, detaining, let me say, not cuffing, detaining the individuals was protocol.
Yes, ma'am. That's,
And you stated that that was essentially so no one could make any phone calls and tip off anybody.
no, ma'am. That, you're misconstruing what I'm saying.
Can you repeat what you said?
Sure, ma'am. So typically, in our training and experience, when someone is arrested for, in this particular case, what happened on I-75, that individual will usually make phone calls to other individuals in the organization. At that point, those individuals will go and clear out, say, a stash house or a money house or something along those lines. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
It does, but in the individual that you're referring to that was stopped, you're saying it's typical that he, after being arrested, would make a phone call?
Pulled over or
Okay.
subsequently during a traffic stop.
You're referring to Beltran.
That's correct.
Yes, Your Honor. I apologize. You testified that they provided the keys. Which defendant provided the keys to the vehicle?
This individual that's sitting in the courtroom, ma'am.
Okay. Agent DeJulio, you are the agent that prepared the DEA 6 report, correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
And you prepared this report based on information that you obtained by not only yourself, but the other officers involved.
That's correct.
So essentially they reported to you their findings and you compiled it all into one report.
I was in charge of the operation at that time.
Okay, and in this report, there's no mention anywhere of any odor of marijuana.
That's because I was not the one that found it.
I know you weren't, but in compiling everyone else's observations or information that they gained in this investigation, nowhere in this report did you mention anything about the odor of marijuana.
That's correct.
And nowhere in this report did you mention possession of marijuana in general at all.
That would also be correct.
So it would be fair to say that there's absolutely no mention of any marijuana anywhere in this DEA 6 report that you prepared.
That's correct again.
As far as the canine search, so you testified that approximately 30 minutes after your arrival, or after consent was gained, the canines arrived to the scene, or the first canine arrived to the scene.
According to my report, yes, ma'am, that's accurate.
Do you recall which officer was the canine handler for the first canine?
Officer Reynolds, ma'am.
Can I backtrack a minute before I even jump to the canine? Your interaction with these defendants was in the lobby of the apartment complex, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And at some point, these defendants were taken from the lobby to a model showroom, essentially.
That's correct.
Were you the officer that took them from the lobby to the model showroom?
Not that I recall.
You don't recall if they were brought by you to another location?
By me, no.
Were you in that showroom at all? Did you leave that lobby and go with the defendants to the showroom at any point?
Not that I recall.
So essentially, aside from information gained by other officers or agents, you don't know what was discussed in the showroom or what was going on in that showroom. When these individuals were brought to the showroom, were they still in cuffs?
As far as I recall, no.
They were not in cuffs at this time.
As far as I recall, no.
do you recall how long these individuals were in handcuffs?
No,
Okay, back to the canines. You stated that you were in the lobby when the canines arrived.
as far as I recall, ma'am, yes.
Excuse me?
As far as I recall, ma'am, yes.
Okay, and once the canines arrived, did the canines come into the lobby? Did you meet them at the vehicle?
I met them in the parking garage, correct.
So I want to make sure we're clear about this because Ms. Mormon is referring to canines in plural.
Oh, I apologize.
There were two, but they came at very separate times.
That's correct.
It's not that Reynolds and DeWalt showed up
That's
together.
correct.
Reynolds is there and from what you testified, there's a hit,
That's correct.
third row.
Correct.
Then DeWalt comes sometime later.
That's correct.
Okay.
I apologize, Your Honor. The first canine arrives and you meet the canine and his handler at the vehicle.
That's correct.
And the canine did an open air search outside of the vehicle.
If I recall his report, that's correct.
And he alerted to the vehicle at that time?
Again, if I recall his report, yes, that's correct.
You were present through all this, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And once he alerted outside the vehicle, you essentially opened the door and allowed him to search inside of the vehicle.
That would also be correct.
Were you the officer that allowed the dog into the vehicle?
No, ma'am, I'm not a canine officer.
Okay. The first canine that searched the vehicle, he did alert inside the vehicle, correct?
If I recall the report, that is correct.
And then agents essentially searched the vehicle subsequently to that canine alerting.
That's also correct.
Because the agents didn't find anything at that point.
No, ma'am, I did not find the exact location of the trap at that exact.
At
moment.
that point, were you aware that there was a trap? Or was that just an assumption?
I was very confident that there was a trap, ma'am, yes.
But you weren't sure, like you hadn't found anything that made you believe there was a trap at that point?
That's not accurate.
Well, it is accurate. What made you, because you're answering that you were confident. So I'm asking, did you know there was a trap at that point? Or did you just have, you were confident there was a trap at that point?
I was highly confident that the signs of the vehicle that I was seeing along with the dog, I was confident that there was a trap in that vehicle.
Okay, so subsequently to that, a second canine was called.
That's right.
About how long did it take the second canine to arrive?
Without referring to my report, I cannot.
And was the second canine already en route, or was he called subsequent to the first canine alerting inside the vehicle?
No, he was called subsequently because one, he was a fellow canine officer, but he was also trained in locating of traps because of his canine background. So he was not necessarily a specialist, but he has had extensive operations in which he's been able to locate traps.
Okay. So the second canine is then deployed. You don't recall how much time has passed now since the initial consent to when the second canine is deployed?
And without referring to my report, I do not know the time.
And that second canine also alerted.
That's correct, ma'am.
And did he alert to the same general area that the first canine alerted to?
He alerted to the exact area.
He alerted to the exact area, and where was that?
There was a small hole about the size of a rivet under the third row back seat on the passenger side that if that dog could have got his nose in there, I believe he would have.
Okay, and then at that point, were you the officer that searched the vehicle?
I assisted in the search, yes.
And essentially found the trap, found a
Yes.
trap,
Essentially found the trap.
and found a pretty large quantity of cocaine in that trap.
That's correct, ma'am.
At this point, did you ever go to the showroom? After the drugs were found, did you go to the showroom where the defendants were?
I don't recall, but I don't believe so.
Essentially, they were put under, they were arrested. They were placed under arrest and their rights were essentially read. Was that after the drugs were found in the vehicle, or was there further investigation?
No, it was after the drugs were found.
prior to the search warrant being, I mean, the house being, yeah, executed for the apartment.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you know if Mr. Gonzalez specifically was charged with any marijuana?
I do not know.
Okay, 1 second. Nothing further right now, Your Honor.
Okay. I have a question, and I remember it. But I will remember it, and I'll ask. I usually wait till they're done, but I'll just interrupt when I remember it.
No.
Mr. Harvey?
Yeah, naturally, you're gonna interrupt me when,
More fun that way.
because you're gonna remember while I'm asking questions, right? I think, now, good afternoon, how you doing?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go over some things, and sorry for being repetitive, but I'm gonna try to separate the two people that were there, okay? And just to lay the groundwork again, you were first to arrive, correct?
Yes, sir.
You approached management, correct?
Yes, sir.
The assistant manager came in, correct?
Yes, sir.
You could see the two people out in the lobby,
Yes.
correct? And when you found out from the assistant manager the nature of their inquiry, you called for additional officers, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I understood those additional officers were Garsh and Ransom,
Yes, sir.
correct? And they arrived before you left the management office, correct?
Believe so, if I understand your question, yes.
Right, you were still in the management office, you saw officers, or TFO Garsh and Special Agent Ransom arrive and start interacting with the gentleman. in
Well,
the
they came to
lobby.
me first.
Oh, okay,
That,
so the guys are still standing around the lobby,
that's correct.
okay. The agents came in, they came back into the management, the separate management office, right?
Yes, like the general management office.
Right, and you told them, hey, these guys are trying to get into the apartment that we're looking for because of Mr. Beltran.
That's
Now, originally, Mr. Beltran was the target of the investigation, correct? Or a target.
He was a target.
Right. And his car had been outfitted with a GPS through a warrant from DeKalb County some months
Objection, Your Honor. Where was it?
before.
I'll let them go a little bit in the same contours that you're gonna establish what you need to about Beltran
Yes,
not living at the apartment or not spending much time at 1104.
yes.
Let me just get Agent Julio up to speed. Mr. Harvey, for whatever reason, did not receive or didn't find a copy of the search warrant that was executed. And so today we are not litigating, was it a good search warrant or not? So he's not going to go real far into asking about what the probable cause was for the search warrant. But he's helped me understand that his contention is that Beltran had minimal contacts to 1104, which will be relevant down the road to litigation about the search warrant. So I'll let him ask you a few questions about that. We won't go much further than that, in case you didn't prepare for it either. We'll see.
Well, I understood that you were with the FIT team, correct?
That's correct. At the time I was assigned to financial investigation.
I'm sorry?
That's correct. At the time I was assigned to financial investigation.
Right, that's capital F-I-T.
That's
I mean, I know you know, but for the court. And the Sandy Springs Police Department received information from the FIT team. Did you provide Sandy Springs with any information?
I don't know if Sandy Springs was provided any information. They were requested, but I do not know if they were provided specific information.
Do you recall providing any information to Investigator J.A. Witkowski?
No, I have no idea.
Okay. Did you participate in getting the tracker device for Mr.
No.
Beltran's? Did you get reports or did you, participate, that's the word I was looking for, in any of the surveillance on Mr. Beltran during the time the tracker device was on his 2014 Chevrolet Cruze?
I don't.
Okay, would you have written report sixes on whether you did or not?
If I did, then I probably would.
Okay. Do you know where, you know that Mr. Beltran was arrested in Sandy Springs, correct?
If I recall correctly, yes.
Okay. And you know that Mr. Beltran, every time he left his house, went to 358 Copeland Lane Southwest?
I do not know that every time he left there, went there.
Every time, all right. Did you know that when he left?
Your Honor, I'm gonna check again for relevance.
Okay, right now, other than this stuff about, fit and, which was new, because we have a different witness, we are rehashing what was explored with another witness, so I'll let Mr. Harvey do it, within the same complex.
And I'm not gonna go beyond those, I assume if he says, no, I didn't know, that ends the inquiry.
I would hope so.
Well, I would push the envelope, but, he left, when he left his apartment, he went to a specific address, on a number of occasions, 358 Copeland Lane Southwest.
Okay.
Really?
I
Okay.
I don't know, sir.
Do you know that when he was arrested by Sandy Springs after exiting 285 up in Sandy Springs?
Believe so, yes, that's where I believe he was arrested.
Okay. And what time do you understand that he was arrested?
Without referring to those particular reports that specifically go to that, I could not tell you, sir.
Okay. Was it 1 hour or 2 hours prior to your arrival at the apartment complex?
Again, I don't know a specific time frame, but I would say it's probably within 2.5 hours.
Okay.
But the two, as I understand it, are linked, because Beltran was arrested,
We were
head on over to 1104.
That's correct.
Had Beltran not been arrested that day, you were not planning on spending time with Simon.
Do you, since you were in charge, you told us, do you remember providing information to an Officer Moore to get the search warrant for that apartment complex?
Just the information that I would have provided at the time would have been color of the door, which way it opens, stuff like that,
Okay. Well,
particularly pertaining to Simon.
yeah, that's what I'm asking. I'm asking whether it was you that provided the information to I don't know whether it's a man or a woman, Officer Moore, for Officer Moore to prepare the search warrant affidavit to get the search warrant. But the information came from you.
That's correct.
Okay. Do you remember telling Officer Moore at the time that at 11 o'clock is when Sandy Springs pulled over Mr. Belcher?
I don't believe that was me that told that.
Do you remember telling Officer Moore that you arrived at 2:23 at 3380 Peachtree Road?
Without referring to my report, I cannot tell you the exact time I am.
Okay. You reviewed your report prior to testifying today?
Yes, if I recall correctly, there's quite a few times on it.
Now, we're back at the apartment. I understand that the two officers, Ransom and Garsh, were the first to interact with the two gentlemen, Mr. Rocha and Mr. Gonzalez, right?
That's
Right. Were you in hearing distance of their initial interaction?
no, they're glass doors.
Okay. How long was the initial interaction before you joined them?
Not very long at all.
Not very long.
Within, I mean, less than 2 minutes.
Okay. when you arrived, when you joined them, what was the first thing you said to either one of those gentlemen?
I would ask them, okay, who's who, what are they doing here? Have you talked to them?
Okay,
Things like that.
let's stop right there. Who would you address that? Who did you address that to?
At the time, I addressed it to TFO Gosh.
Okay, and when you addressed who's who to TFO Garsh, what did TFO Garsh tell you?
Without absolutely quoting him, that this was your defendant's name, Roche, and this is Mr. Gonzalez.
Okay, so apparently someone had asked them their names prior to you arriving, correct?
Presumed.
Okay, and what was the next inquiry you made?
What are they doing here? Things along those lines.
To whom? Okay, let's stop right there. What are you doing here? What are they doing here? Was that addressed to Officer Garsh or Special Agent Ransom?
These are the questions that I would ask my team, yes, sir.
Okay, and they responded to you, correct?
At the time, they might not have gotten that far in the
Okay, well,
But just so I think we're all clear, when you made it into the lobby, within 2 minutes of Garsh and Ransom getting there, your first set of steps was to talk to Garsh and Ransom.
Yes,
Hey, what have you guys learned?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's talk about what they said to you, what you asked of them, and then we can talk about whatever you did next. Because I want to make sure I'm clear, and the record is clear. DiGiulio is getting info from his colleagues. Now DiGiulio is getting info from the suspect.
that's right. That's kind of where I was going, kind of step by step. And again, the first inquiries were to your team. I'm gonna use that.
That's correct.
They gave you answers, correct?
Yeah, they would give me answers, we haven't gotten that far, or they would say, this is such and such.
But you don't remember exactly what it was.
No, no,
Who did you address first?
Mr. Garsh. TFO Garsh.
No, okay. Once you got that information, did you then, I'm gonna segue into addressing each one of the gentlemen that were there. Which one of those gentlemen did you address first?
I addressed your client first.
Okay, in English or Spanish?
Both.
All right, and what did you ask him, either in English or Spanish first?
What are you doing here? Or are you trying to get in to the apartment? How are you connected to the apartment? I would ask him things of those nature.
Okay, well, that's a series of questions.
That's
Let's talk about that. What are you doing here? Was that addressed in English?
Yes, I addressed them always in English first, and then if he didn't understand, I would try in Spanish.
Okay, and did you have to repeat that in Spanish?
So without being specific on specific questions, I could not tell you which ones he understood in English and which ones he understood in Spanish. You'd have to ask the client.
All right, sure. And did you get a response in English or Spanish?
Many times I got responses in both English and Spanish.
Okay, kind of broken English, but more in Spanish?
Yes,
Okay,
it is yes.
and was there a response to what are you doing here?
Yes, as far as
Yeah, all right, and what was the response that you recollect?
was that he was trying to get his IDs out of the apartment.
Okay. And what was the next inquiry?
Sir, I don't know each inquiry specifically. My report was only sum the conversation of it. It's not, I asked this question first, I asked that question next. So I could not tell you to a degree that I'm comfortable saying which inquiry came second, which inquiry came third.
Did you hear, or did you ask Mr. Roca how he got to the apartment?
Yes,
Okay, you asked him in English or Spanish how he got to the apartment,
yes,
all right? And what did he reply?
that he drove a black Buick Entourage.
Okay. And you're unsure at this particular time as to whether or not they were handcuffed or not handcuffed.
That's correct.
And did you continue talking with Mr. Roca?
Yes,
And what questions did you ask after that? I know it's hard to remember the next the next area that you asked about.
sir, and the bank of questions that I would ask are, why are you here? How did you get here?
So,
Did you drive? Wait, I'm not comfortable saying, I said this first, he said that, I said this.
well,
So why don't we just cover topics, and then if he's told you he's not gonna be able to put topics in order,
no, we got, what are you doing here? How did you get here? What would be the next general topic?
Why are you here?
Well, would that address, what are you doing here? And he said, trying to get his IDs?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, so we got what, why, and how. What else may have been addressed?
That's usually my predominant immediate question.
Okay. Now, was there an occasion in which, if he was in handcuffs, that Mr. Roca was frisked?
I would imagine so, sir.
Okay, well, I understood you to say that the keys to the vehicle were on a table.
That's correct.
How'd they get there?
Not by me, sir, so I could not tell you.
Okay, did you see him, Mr. Roca, being frisked?
No, sir, I didn't.
Did you see anybody take keys from his pocket?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay, did you see who placed the keys on the table?
No, sir, I did not.
But when you retrieved the keys, they were already on a table.
They were handed to me by TFO guards who received them from the table. That's correct.
Okay. When you interacted with Mr. Roca, and you were in both English and Spanish, tell me what you asked him with regard to the black Buick.
I would ask him questions such as, was he driving? Where did he park it? Is there anything I'm going to find in there? Should I search it? Can I search your vehicle? Questions like that.
So first, we're talking about where it was parked.
That's correct, sir.
All right. And was there an answer given about where it was parked?
In the parking garage, sir.
And that you told us is a private parking garage, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Is there anything in there? Is another question you would ordinarily ask, correct?
And by there, I assume you mean the vehicle?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and was there a response to that? Do you remember?
I don't recall.
Okay. And when you say, can I search it? Did you say, can I search the vehicle?
That's usually what I would say is,
Okay, do you recall what you said in this instance?
can I search the vehicle?
Okay, and what was the response?
Yes.
Okay, did you know whose vehicle it was?
I don't understand the question.
Well, do you know who the owner of the vehicle was?
I understood that he was the one driving the vehicle.
I didn't say driving, I said, did you understand who the owner of the vehicle was?
Are you asking who was it registered to?
Did you know who it was registered to?
At the time of speaking to your client, no, I did not.
Okay. Did you know how long it had been there?
At the time of speaking to your client, I did not.
Was there any mechanism by which you could review either when it got there or how it got there? In other words, surveillance video on the parking garage or not?
I do not work for that individual property. I do not know.
Okay, so, but you didn't do any further investigation saying, hey, do you guys have any surveillance video of the lobby or of the parking lot?
No.
Okay. The canine officers, those canine officers were not part of the task force, were they?
At the time, no.
Okay. So they were working for individual jurisdictions, correct?
They belong to Sandy Springs, sir.
Yes, both of them were Sandy Springs.
That's correct.
Were either one of the canine officers wearing body cameras?
I do not.
But as far as your investigation is concerned, you have no surveillance video, no body cameras of any of the searches you've told us about, correct?
That's correct.
Also, I understood that although you can't say when they were cuffed, who cuffed them, can you say who took them to the other rooms?
No, sir.
Can you tell us whether they were handcuffed when they were taken to the model
No.
apartment? If they were not, or you can't tell
No,
us?
sir, I can't tell you.
You were in charge at the time. Once you got the keys from TFO Garsh, did you go down to the parking lot?
Yes,
Did you immediately find the vehicle?
yes,
You didn't have to come back and ask where the vehicle was or look around for
No,
it?
sir.
Did you go into the vehicle at that time?
no, sir.
You had the keys, right?
Yes.
How long, and I understood it was about what, 30 minutes before the canine unit, the first canine unit came.
If I recall my report, that's correct.
After that, there was a second canine unit, correct?
That's correct.
And that canine unit, after the second canine unit, and the trap you told us was found at around 4 o'clock. Is that correct?
I believe so.
So during this particular period, Mr. Roca and Mr. Gonzalez were kept in the model, I guess, showrooms. Were they being watched by officers?
Yes.
Okay. And they remained in those rooms the entire time?
I do not recall. I was out with the vehicle, sir.
Okay, after the drugs were found, you told us that someone, I guess, someone from either APD or some other law enforcement agency came to get them, to arrest them.
That's correct.
You didn't do that.
That's correct.
Ransom didn't do it. Darsh
Yeah,
didn't
I
do
asked
it.
Agent Ray.
Okay, all right. So you're telling us you have no idea who went to get them and who took them where, right?
If I understand
Yeah.
your question correctly, then yes.
Okay, all right.
Did you see either Mr. Roca or Mr. Gonzalez again that day after you left the lobby, or they left the lobby to go to the showrooms? I don't know who left first, but after that juncture, did you even see him again?
Yes, sir. So eventually when APD came to transport them, I met the transport agent. And at that time, I believe both defendants were already in the vehicle, in the police cruiser.
And why would you have interacted with the transporting officer?
Because as the individual who is in charge of that particular scene for the search warrant, it's just kind of my job to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Okay. So that was the next and final time you saw Roca or Gonzalez, was they were now en route to
That's
county or
correct. They were-
city jail,
they were
whatever
about
was
to
running
be-
at
That's
that.
correct.
And all of that was before obtaining the search warrant, correct?
By all of that, what do you mean?
You're finding the trap, you're, I guess, calling the local authorities and getting the local authorities
That's correct.
out to
That's
get both of those folks. right?
That's correct. We found the trap prior to executing the search warrant.
Now, I understand that, this is an apartment complex, that's a private apartment complex, right?
That's correct.
Members of the public can't just go in and go up the elevator, can they?
That's correct.
And one of the things you were doing, in fact, I think you told us, was the initial, I'm gonna go in and see if I can get the cooperation of the apartment complex.
That's correct.
I understand that sometime, at some point, you got the apartment complex to agree to allow a canine officer, and maybe someone else, I don't know whether you were with them, to go up to the 11th floor.
That's correct.
And the 11th floor not being accessible to the public.
Also correct.
and do a canine search in the hallway, correct?
That's correct.
Of the door of the apartment for which you wanted to search.
That's correct.
Okay. And as a result of that, dog alert, that you understand, that was part of what you told Officer Moore to put in the search warrant, correct?
That's correct.
Was it DeWald's dog or was there a third canine? Or
No,
was it
sir.
Reynolds?
If I recall correctly, it was Officer Reynolds, the
Okay,
dog that did the search of, or,
the sniff of 1104,
that's correct.
but it was an external sniff.
That's
In the
right.
hallway, here's 1104, dog did whatever dog did.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it may have been Falco.
I do not know the name of that canine.
Okay. You just don't, a dog at some point went up, went in the hall, alerted to the door,
Correct.
from what you understand.
That's correct.
Okay, that's what you understand.
That's correct.
I think at this time, Judge, that's all I have.
Okay. Any redirect, Ms. Hall?
I just want to clear one thing with, especially with you. When you were testifying, when you were talking to the defense counsel, that Officer Garsh and Officer Ransom were talking to the defendant, and he came over approximately 2 minutes later. This was all in the event of you already being in the lobby with the, or not the lobby, but the office with the assistant manager. You just allowed them to approach the individuals first.
Yeah, that's correct. I was just finishing my conversation with the manager.
That's no problem.
Ms. Mormon, anything else for Agent DeJulio?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. I remember my question, but Mr. Harvey ended up asking it. We've covered everything. All right, may Agent DeJulio step down? Great, thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. Okay, well, I was about to ask if you had any other witnesses you wanted to call, and so we're all clear here. This is in connection with the events that the state believes would support the search of the enclave.
Yeah.
We will reconvene if it's appropriate. And it sounds like it will be, to talk about the search of 1104. So you're not resting there. You may have other witnesses. You may have these same witnesses that you want to call after Ms. Mormon and Mr. Harvey have a chance, or really Mr. Harvey, because it sounds like Ms. Mormon has had the search warrant all along and did not file any motions about suppressing anything found in the apartment. It sounds like what was found in the apartment would be problematic for Mr. Roca and not Mr. Gonzalez, which fits with everything I've heard, especially just being along for the ride. So, hopeful line for Mr. Gonzalez. So I think we're at a close here. I'm happy to take some top-level argument. If folks want to refer me to cases or make any argument, we're good until a few minutes before 1. Then have a civil matter I need to turn to at 1 o'clock. I'm also happy to let folks submit an informal letter brief. I'm not asking for citations to the record, et cetera. You're welcome to do that, but that's usually not my practice. I haven't had a suppression hearing in a bunch of months, so I'm happy to try things a different way. Let me hear from each of the attorneys as to their preference about how they'd like to manage this piece, which is motions to suppress statements made by Gonzalez and Roca, and then suppress what was seized from the Buick Enclave. Ms. Hall.
Your Honor, the state is ready for argument now. We will reserved if we have to reconvene to do the argument, and we're meeting anytime.
All right, Mr. Harvey, are you in a position to argue a bit about, you're always ready to argue, about the part that we worked through so far, or do you have a format preference?
With you. Here's, I'd like to, and I hate to use this term, kick these cans down the road, and I'll tell you why. The evidence is not concluded, and the potential evidence is not even concluded on the one portion yet.
Because,
There may be additional evidence that one of us.
oh, right, I need to ask both sides. Fair point.
So,
That would be step one.
but I can't make that determination right now. That's
Because,
why- Well, because again, I need to have, additional time with Mr. Oka about what was said today. And what, because there were things today that were somewhat, at odds. With
Somewhat
at odds, ODDS at odds with what I understood the facts to be. So I am asking that if and when, and I think when, we reconvene, I get, and the state closes its evidence, then I would be in a position to make a determination as to whether or not I want additional evidence to present. So I don't want to brief up anything until the evidence is closed.
okay. Ms. Mormon, were you planning, if we had 2 more hours, were you planning on presenting any evidence on behalf of Mr. Gonzalez?
No, Your Honor, but given the time constraint and the 1 p.m. cutoff, I'm not opposed to briefing it or reconvening and continuing arguing then.
Well, it sounds like we're going to reconvene anyway, to which you'd be cordially invited to work through the search warrant at 11:04. The good news for Mr. Gonzalez and you is it sounds like that doesn't really implicate him, but we wouldn't keep you out of that hearing. But another way to work through this would be to just table things, give Mr. Harvey a chance to look at the discovery he overlooked, and then also have the discussion, the witness testimony about the search of the apartment. And it may be that we actually don't need testimony about the search, depending on what's in the affidavit. But we certainly would need to reconvene to discuss that. So maybe we'll just give everyone a chance to argue their pieces. I think there'll be different pieces. Ms. Mormon isn't going to have a whole lot to say about the search of 11:04. Mr. Harvey will have lots to say about lots of things, and we'll work through that at that time. Does that work for the state? And Mr. Harvey was spot on that, of course, he has the right to present evidence as well. Ms. Mormon is not going to. Although I'll say this, Ms. Mormon, if between now and whenever we reconvene, you decide there is some evidence you want to present, you'll be free to do that. You may digest what was said today, and then you and Mr. Gonzalez decide you want to call a witness. But we will check on that when we next get together. If after Mr. Harvey looks at the search warrant affidavit, he concludes that really we're arguing about the 4 corners of the affidavit, then it may not need to be in person for anything because it's going to be the lawyers arguing, and Mr. Roca can plug in the same way that Mr. Gonzalez is plugging in. Let's talk scheduling. Mr. Harvey, how much time would you like to do the things you said you now need to do so that Ms. Nelson can set this down for another date? And before that date, we'll figure out, is it an in-person thing because we're going to have sworn testimony, or can we do a Zoom proceeding because it's the lawyers presenting?
I'm sorry, but all these things are opening up now, so my schedule is becoming the way it used to be. And I potentially have a trial scheduled starting October 4th in Lexington, Kentucky. I anticipate that will last at least 2 weeks, so I'm going to ask you for at least until the beginning of November to reset, if you don't mind.
Okay.
It's not because I need that much time to look at the affidavit, I just don't.
You'll be doing other things. No, I understand, and it's not like this case has been on an accelerated path, for lots of reasons. But I would like us to get closure. We heard today exactly why we need to move things faster. These officers saying that was 2 years ago, I don't remember. But a lot of those delays predate most of the people in this room. So I'll get with Ms. Nelson. We will set a morning or an afternoon. We'll block out sort of half a day for the second and final part of the suppression motions in connection with this case. We may not need all that time. And well before that date, I'll have Ms. Nelson get an update from the lawyers so that they can say, you know what, we don't need an in-person setting, but we'll try to recreate this very setting should it be necessary for the state to call witnesses, or should Mr. Harvey indicate he's going to call witnesses, we will make that happen. And we'll look for a late October or early November window for this. Anything else, Ms. Hall?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Harvey? Ms. Mormon, anything else?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, the interpreter team. Great work. Your sheet is full, you need a new one. Oh, you're both here. Still.
The little X, I didn't bring it right.
Little X. What's going on in Lexington, Kentucky?
A former